tonight, so I'm going to use it.
Yeah, he does.
Use it.
Call this meeting of the Rockport Select Board to order for Monday, July 11th, 2016. The first order of business, if you have a cell phone, please mute it, as I am doing now. If you have to take a call, please step outside, all the way outside, because we can hear anything that goes on in the vestibule out here. Moving on, approval of the minutes. We do not have, and we've already tabled the minutes for Monday, November 9th and the 17th, November 17th. We do have before us the minutes from April 1 special meeting of the Select Board. And I'd entertain a motion to approve for discussion.
So moved.
Second, was that there?
I appreciate a second.
Yeah.
Okay, Jeff has seconded.
Yeah, we'll back that up.
Oh, I sound that bad, huh? Okay, we have the minutes from Friday, April 1st, of the Select Board in front of us. Do we have, and it's been motioned and seconded, do we have any changes, alterations, corrections?
Just would point out that the original copy we got in the packet was incorrect, so
Yeah.
that the copy that we have this evening is
Yeah.
what I think the closest that we have.
Okay,
Otherwise, no.
You're falling off that cliff
discussion?
there already.
and I will note that,
I was absent on that.
oh, you were.
Yeah, he was.
You were absent.
Yeah, you were. We
And,
needed
so
you.
You'll be abstaining, and Brendan, who was not on the board at the time, will be abstaining, so.
The rest of us are here.
Right.
All in favor of accepting the minutes as presented? I see 3, and the abstentions are 2, so we have a complete vote on that. We then have the, Monday, May 9th has not been presented to us. That has already been tabled. So we'll move on to the Thursday, June 2nd, executive session, and we have that in front of us. And I'd entertain a motion to accept.
So moved?
And a second? Second by Owen.
Second.
Discussion. Hearing on.
This was the one where Jeff.
I was both absent and
Yes.
there.
Gotcha.
You were there in the beginning and
Yep.
then at the end.
Truly?
Okay.
I must have had someplace to go, huh?
Yep. So, yes.
I didn't think I was that
You had to
important.
leave during the meeting, I forget why, but that has been presented to us. All in favor?
Where does it leave me? I'll abstain.
Actually, I think you need to abstain because you were not there for the motions to come out and adjourn.
I also need to.
And also abstain. So the 2 abstentions are, thank you. We now move to the Monday, June 6th, meeting with the Camden Select Board. This is the one that we held over in their Washington Street Conference Room regarding discussions on hiring, if we could use that word, Randy Gagney as the interim police chief. We have those minutes prepared by Camden in front of us.
Move to accept.
Second.
Moved and seconded.
One correction,
Oh, yeah?
and that is that at the very top, when it says who is present, somebody's left out. Owen. Owen's name is not listed there, but he was there.
On June 6th?
Yeah. No, this is the
This-
joint meeting.
Oh,
June
yeah, yeah,
6th.
yeah, yeah.
They may have left me out because I was rushing from
You
another
came in
meeting
late.
and I
You
came in late.
Yes, so we need to add Owen as a member in attendance.
The motion that we made is showed as a 5-0 vote, so
Yes.
clearly he was here for that.
He was there for half the meeting, so he's ow Casas.
He wasn't, he didn't come in that late, I
Oh,
recall.
I was like 7 minutes late.
Yes.
Wasn't very
It's
late
the
at all.
Parks
So he should be
Committee.
noted as
Yeah.
present, otherwise it's fine.
He was here for the majority, or there for the majority. Any additional changes, other than adding Owen? Hearing none? All in favor of accepting?
I need to abstain again. although I
And
was there.
abstentions? Brendan abstained because he was not on the board at the time. So that is passed.
Was at the meeting,
I
though.
was there.
You were at the meeting. You are correct. Then we have the executive session from later that evening, Monday, June 6th. And that has been presented to us. This was when you made a correction to, I believe, yeah?
Right.
So, we have that before us.
Move to accept.
Second?
Moved and seconded. Discussion.
And my only correction was to add, the original minutes had only talked about a 3-year contract and didn't talk about who it was for or what the position was.
Yeah.
I think that-
That's correct. No further discussion? All in favor? Abstentions? And then again. The next one we have the minutes of the executive session from July 7th, which I don't believe was on the original agenda. But that was the executive session that we held Monday the 7th.
I move to accept the minutes as presented.
Seconds.
No. Okay, moved and seconded. For discussion, July 7th was Thursday, not Monday. There is a correction in the heading.
Okay, yeah. These are the paper plate minutes.
Yes,
Oh,
They were indeed.
yeah.
yes.
Did you like those? My,
An opening time on the paper plate?
yeah. You're welcome.
It's gotta be a first.
Does it still smell like that delicious sandwich I had in it?
Okay.
Okay.
That
Out of
is
order.
one
Out of
that we
order.
should frame or
I
something.
got an idea. We'll put it in the time capsule.
Yes, right next to that PBR I still have from the Arch.
I drank
Okay,
mine.
okay. We're moving on. We have the motion, it's been accepted. The correction has been made. All in favor with the amendment? That is unanimous. So, we now move on to some announcements. The next upcoming select board meetings. We'll have a special meeting of the select board next Monday with the Ad hoc Library Planning Committee. That will be July 18th, 7 p.m. right here in the Opera House Meeting Room, and we will live stream it. Our next regular scheduled meeting is Monday, July 25th, 7 p.m. here. If you're wondering, we are going to 2 meetings a month at least until we can get over the backlog that we have. Also, we have a joint meeting with the Town of Camden Select Board on Tuesday, July 26th. That will be at 6:30 p.m. at the Camden Wastewater Treatment Plant. The Select Board and any who should show up will be giving a tour of that plant. We spend significant amount of our taxpayer money there, so we will be seeing what they're doing for us.
Is that the extent of that meeting? Is there anything
No,
more on the agenda?
we will be then, after we have the tour, we will then be meeting briefly with the Camden Select Board. I don't have an agenda yet, but I believe it'll be, talking about items of mutual concern.
The only concern I would have is that I'm all for seeing the wastewater plant, but if it's a public meeting, I don't know how well that's gonna work. If the public wants to attend, if we're gonna have other substantive discussions, I wonder if we should adjourn to a different location.
They've told me that there is a place to meet over there. I'm not familiar with the
I'm
plant,
not
so.
either.
What is the date?
So July 26th?
Yeah.
Yes, Tuesday, July 26th.
That would be my only concern. I just wanna make
Okay.
sure that we have a place for the public to attend that meeting safely.
Oh, we can hope the weather is good and we can meet outside.
It's fine with me.
All right.
Why do I have July 25th at 4 o'clock select board meeting regarding comp plan?
Because that is an error, and I thought I had corrected that.
No, that's
on-
all right.
It still
Where
lives
are,
in his
where are
calendar.
you looking?
I'm looking on my calendar, which,
Oh.
so it existed at one point, but no longer.
Right.
Yeah. Yes.
It's a problem. I have that
Yep.
problem all the time.
Certainly is.
I hope the town website. All other announcements really are up on the town website, town.rockport.me.us. Please go there and get all the updates for the meetings, particularly the committee meetings. I do have a couple of announcements. First of all, there will be the special election for the Maine School Administrative District Number 28 Director, and to concurrently serve as the five-town Community School District Number 19 School Board. That will be on Tuesday, August 2nd, from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. over in the Richardson Room of the town office. This is the runoff election. There were 17?
The runaway election.
But 17 voters or 17 people who received one vote apiece, and so we had to hold a runoff election for that position. The town clerk's office will be temporarily relocating to the Richardson Room beginning Wednesday, August 3rd, for approximately 1 month. So the lobby and clerk area can have repairs made, walls and ceilings painted, new carpeting, et cetera, et cetera. So there will be a special entrance into the Richardson Room from the back door. Please, if you're using it for the clerk, use that one.
I have a question. Were we gonna close that day so that we can leave?
We need to talk about that. So Mike's trying to set up a meeting with us
Was
for
it gonna work all night?
tomorrow, no.
Yeah. Okay, from that, I would draw the conclusion that the clerk's office may be closed for business on Wednesday, August 3rd, but please check the town website for confirmation on that. Also, there will be an election on November 8th as part of the special town meeting at that point to fill out the remaining 2 years of Ms. Stephanie Lash's term of office on the library committee. She had submitted her resignation, which we had accepted at our last meeting. Committee openings are addressed in the agenda for this evening. The agenda changes. Do we have any agenda changes we wish to make for tonight's meeting?
One more announcement briefly, and that would be the library book sale, coming up this weekend, starting on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. The hours are all over the place, and I want to add with that the State Street Traditional Jazz Band concert, which will benefit the library, is happening the weekend after the book sale. Tickets will be available at the book sale, so we encourage everybody to come and show up.
23rd.
23rd, right?
Yes.
Can I ask a quick question about this watershed study meeting on the 14th?
Yeah.
Is that specific to the Goose River area source? What is that watershed study meeting?
That is my understanding, that it is for all the sources that,
Right.
that
I think it's
Push water
the
into the
follow-up to the one that you went to
Yep, yep.
last year.
Okay,
So it's that group again.
cool.
Yeah.
Thank you.
other,
That's a good one. You should totally go to that one.
and that's on Thursday, not on Friday. That's on Thursday, the 14th.
Arrow.
Any further?
Designate that.
Then I will move on to public comment. Is there anyone wishing to make public comment this evening? Public comment should be yes.
Conservation Commission.
Oh, a public comment. Okay, I'm gonna read my normal statement here. Public comment should be directed at issues not under discussion on this evening's agenda. Comment from the public will be welcome prior to each agenda item. Further comment will be granted only by permission from the board. All public comment should be brief and to the point. We have someone wishing to make a public comment.
Okay, I just briefly would like to touch on the 125th celebration going on. Fireman's Ball will be on Friday, July 29th at the Samoset. Tickets are available at the town office and brownpaperticket.com for $50 with a cash bar. There will be a parade on Saturday, July 30th at 1 p.m. It will go from Grafham's Seafood to RES. And if anybody would like to sign up for that, we have papers at the town office. And then we are having the dinner on the bridge on Sunday, August the 7th, in the evening, and those tickets are $35, and they're also available at Brown Paper Ticket and at the town office.
Thank you. Does anyone else wish to make public comment this evening? I'm updating my calendar here. Okay. Then hearing nothing else, we'll move on to the town manager's report. Mr. Bates.
You have the printed version in front of you, but I'll quickly try to go through it. The infrastructure projects are all moving forward. The The School Street project, as Jeff knows, is underway, proceeding very slowly, but it is getting done. Summer Street is also underway. The water work is taking longer than expected. They've hit ledge there as well. So that's taken a little bit longer. They've asked for an extension of the time for them to finish because the water has taken a bit longer. The high sidewalk, as you've heard me say a number of times, sidewalk and the Mill Street Bridge, both are affected by moving of power and telephone poles, and we are still struggling with trying to get those poles moved. The Mill Street Bridge project is due to start later this week, and we still don't know that the poles are gonna get moved in time. And it's been on the docket with them for months.
Just a super quick one. Both of those extensions don't translate into additional costs for the town.
No.
It was a contracted job.
Well, if we hit ledge putting in drainage, we pay extra for the ledge. There's an amount of money that's in there for ledge that we have, but if it goes beyond that amount, we pay extra for that.
Okay.
So, but the ledge that the water
Right.
department company is, they pay for that.
Okay.
So in both those projects, in Mill Street Bridge and High Sidewalk, they're gonna get held up by Fairpoint not moving the poles. CMP is ready to move. They've been ready to move for months, but they're Fairpoint poles, so, and CMP can't go and move Fairpoint poles because of union issues also. So, we're kind of stuck on, the Mill Street Bridge is the first one that's gonna be a problem. Hopefully, the Fairpoint guy has promised Mike he'll meet with him tomorrow. But they were supposed to be starting on the 15th. And that means starting to excavate and closing that road off. That's all been announced. I believe the signs are up. It's been in the papers and also online, on Facebook, it's been going around. That road is gonna be very inconvenient for a group of people that use that as a cut-through. So the people that use that road are gonna be inconvenienced a great deal for about a month. The West Street sidewalk extension, it's all designed. If you go out there, you'll see the red marks on the road where the sidewalk is gonna go out to. It will narrow up the road, which in many regards will be a good thing because people will drive slower through that after they get off that road by the ball fields. And so the sidewalk will go up and make a left turn, go a little bit through the end of the park, and then across to the appropriate place on the street on Route 1 and cross over to the Market Basket. The library AC unit has been ordered and will be installed soon. I'm not sure if it's, last week they were waiting for the electrical contractors to commit to a time to do that. And I don't know if anybody's noticed, their new sign is up. It's very noticeable, looks nice. Yeah, it does look much better. And they had a really good turnout for their Beach Hill workshop. The summer schedule for MUBEC for ORC is moving along, and MUBEC has not been a huge problem for us yet. We haven't had a huge run on people trying to come in and get building permits done. Fire department has been very busy with traffic accidents, seems to be the thing of the day, but we've also had a couple of calls over the weekend. You noticed that the 9 of June had a problem with a motor blower fan on the...
Yeah, what was that?
Yeah, blower fan up on the roof, the exhaust blower, the motor burned out or whatever, so it's not operable.
You were telling me about that.
And so they're still closed. They haven't been able to get back up and running.
Do we have an estimate for them?
No, I don't, but they're still closed until they can get that motor replaced, because that's that's the ventilation over the stove.
Systems and a cooking system, so
Right.
anything
Yep.
that's cooked goes up through there. And
Truck 25 is still giving us problems. We've spent dribs and drabs of money over the past several months. And we just keep spending money. That's our next truck to replace, correct?
yes.
but we're up to $5,000 or $6,000 in repairs over the past few months.
Which one is that?
It's the one that you guys bought, or the town bought used from South Carolina. It's
Okay.
the utility truck.
So that's the next one due to be replaced, but we have to keep it running. There was a brake problem and what was the other, electrical
Brake,
problem?
And then the lights went, and then the fuse panel.
Yep.
And you can't find that fuse panel anymore.
So the chief has also attended the Fire Chiefs Convention in Connecticut with Lieutenant Rollins and Pearson, and firefighter Rollins also attended, so that was a good training event for them. One of the things, that's where you
You went
got-
with a bunch of Rollinses and I expect it to be a training event?
Yeah, but isn't that where you saw the alternative to the Plymouth system? And so Jason brought back information on another system that may be worth our looking at for the capital improvement plan, particularly in the highway garage. Because setting up a system in the highway garage is gonna be very difficult, because there's so many different trucks and they're not assigned a bay. I mean, one of the things with the Plymouth system is they're designed so the truck is in that bay, and it always has, there's not a lot of flexibility with them. This system may help us deal with the issues over at the Public Works garage. Finance, Meg,
Before we move on, didn't you also take down some new system that you folks had developed for identifying who was in a building at the time?
It's a tag-in, tag-out system.
oh, that's right, yeah, sorry, I missed that.
Rockland Fire actually had it established. We've kind of piggybacked off them, and we're now meeting as a group of chiefs to try to get the whole county to go countywide. We actually had the signs made with a B, 1, 2, 3 for basement, 1, 2, first floor, second, third, it goes on a cone. And that's where firefighters' tags will attach to it. If they've been assigned to the basement, that's where they're gonna tag in. So we've developed it and kind of modified it a little, painted it, and we've been taking it to station. Next Wednesday is our annual chiefs meeting, and we'll have it there to show everybody this is what it will look like. So that way, if we go to Rockland or Camden or Appleton comes here, we're all using the same system and everybody knows what to do when they get to the scene. It's an accountability thing.
Yep. Was that well received down in Connecticut? Did they have opinions?
That's not what we were, that was something
Oh.
separate.
Oh,
This is a Knox County, there's 18 fire departments in Knox County that Rockland, Camden, Hope are trying to get all the other county or towns to get involved. So we're going and trying to get everybody unified.
Okay, thank you.
Public Works, the new excavator's been put into service, they've been working it really hard lately. Replacing culverts and cleaning ditch lines with, particularly when we have rains like we had the other day, having our ditches all cleaned, and we don't get a lot of washouts. I was a little concerned about Summer Street washing out, because there was a lot of water coming down that hill, but somehow it managed to stay in place this time. And we had a potentially serious problem, we have a potential serious problem with the drainage line that comes down off of Central Street, goes down through the parking lot, and exits down by, through Taylor's Place in the parking lot and around one of the buildings, that it's washing out under the parking lot, so that there's a sinkhole. Last time I saw it was a sinkhole about this big around and probably 2 feet, 2.5 feet deep. Mike did put some fabric in there and put some material and filled it back in, hoping that it would take care of it, and it washed away, and I think it's gotten bigger. So we may have a potentially serious repair there, because it is our drainage. So we'll have to go on to the property and deal with it, because we have a drainage easement for that. We won't know how much and what that's gonna take until we get in there and start digging and find out how much of the pipe is bad and how much we have to repair. So it could be potentially serious, the whole can of worms thing. But the good news is with the excavator, the repair is a lot easier than having to tie up the front end loader and the backhoe. I mean, it's a lot easier with the excavator. Police Department, as you all know, the police, Chief Kelly officially retired as of the 2nd. We all were at the event. I think it was very well attended, and it was a great event. the two towns have been working very well together. There's been several incidents already where we've benefited by the two towns working and sharing resources. And I think you've seen a couple of the things in the papers where, the fact that we have supervision on pretty much now 24/7. There's a supervisor that the police can refer to. I think it's worked in both cases. It's been reciprocal for us. Travis was able to provide supervision for Camden police officers, and Camden has provided supervision for us. And also, as in my report, there's the string of car thefts that are going on up in, is that your development? Car break-ins and things in your development, and so Camden has allowed their detective to do some work there, and that's moving forward. So it all seems to be going very well so far. I did express to the police officers that in this case, it was okay for them to come, to tell me how they think it's going without fear of breaking the chain of command. Police officers are very tied to the chain of command. They live and breathe the chain of command. And it makes them a little nervous, but, Randy's been pretty clear as far as it's okay to talk about this piece is not, but this is okay, this piece is okay, so that they feel like they can come in and say, yeah, we think this is working okay, or we think it's terrible, this is the worst thing we ever did. So far, I think it's being received pretty well. We've seen a lot of improvements and more coming. Thursday at 3, I think it is, the two departments are gonna have their first joint meeting together, and they'll do a mutual swearing in of officers. So that will happen Thursday. And also.
We will have our first review of that at our September meeting.
September, yep. And the Camden officers will, I think it's this week, they're providing 18 hours of coverage in Rockport. So the Camden officers will be working in Rockport. I believe it's this week, but it could be next week. Just because our officers have been working pretty much every day for months and months, and they can use a break in just a normal 40-hour work week.
Yeah, with respect to, you said, knock on wood, it's working well now. That's sort of our view from administratively, what have you. Have we had any input from our citizens, good, bad, or indifferent? And the one thing I would like to do is sort of reach out on that first review meeting, reach out to people to have them come and say either it's great, this happened, or I'm nervous about it, or, nothing's changed and the status quo is good.
Listening tour.
Listening tour would be, and also, which starts up in October.
Well, but I think, the point of having it, if we do it in September, to encourage people to come and comment here, that would be a good thing.
Yeah.
I have had a couple of people that said they were leery about it, but after they started to think about it, they're feeling more open to the idea. One of the things we are working on, Pat and I need to work on, is the administrative work in the office, because we're so shorthanded with police officers. The last thing we need them doing is doing administrative work in the office without Craig in the office. So we may work on an agreement to have their administrator help our officers here, and we just compensate them for that. And also, we're looking at ways that the phone, the non-emergency business line, can be picked up and just answered police department and forwarded to the right officer's mailbox or dealt with on a case-by-case basis, because right now the phone just rings and it goes to an answering machine. And so the idea is to have it picked up, so if people are making a call, a non-emergency call, I need a traffic accident report, or I need to leave a message for such and such an officer, it can get, somebody picks it up and it gets forwarded to somebody.
Yeah.
So, town clerk, tax collector, Linda's gearing up for the next big election on August 2nd. Assessing inspections, inspections take the lion's share of Kerry's time this time of the year. One of the advantages is we're sharing, not Megan. Caitlin. We're sharing Caitlin with Camden also, and so they're able to churn through these inspections a lot quicker than having one person go out and do them. So they can go in, go to a house, one person goes upstairs, one person can go downstairs, or one person can look at the outside, one person can look at the inside, and they're able to cover a lot more ground, a lot more houses a lot quicker. He's still gearing up for trying to get get it all done so we can commit sometime mid to late March. No, August, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
March, August, sorry. Sorry, mid to late August, which would be pretty amazing if you can pull that off. The Harbor and Marine Park is busier than ever this summer. It's just jam-packed. We often have several tour buses at a time showing up there because it's a beautiful stopover point. And parking is becoming an increasingly more difficult problem there. We're working on solutions and trying to get people to park on the other side on the north side parking area, the people that aren't just visiting, to go to the north side parking area, park there and walk across the bridge.
As I pointed out to you on the 4th of July weekend, there were like 24 cars parked there on the 4th of July at like 8 o'clock in the morning.
Oh, really? Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Plus the ones that were parked over by the boat club and the ones that were parked down around the side where you're nearer to Rockport Marine. It was a packed business
Yeah.
on a holiday at that hour.
We're working hard to try and to develop parking. There is the possibility of 3 more spaces that we can get without, it means losing a little bit of grass, but, you know, it's not a whole lot of grass. We're not gonna have to move any buildings. The picnic table can stay. You know, every space we gain there, I hate taking away green space, but every space we gain, it gets crazy down there at lunchtime. It's really, really busy.
Is there any way we can improve access to Kramer Park and encourage people, you know, like the ones that are gonna be parking on the north side of the harbor, also to park over in Kramer Park? And
Mike and I just looked at that today, is what we could do. One of the things we looked at, it's getting the regulars used to using those places. And we could do some angled-in parking as you're going in. There's some grass area there it's nice, it's nice having the grass area, but we could get some angled-in parking and maybe get 5 or 6 cars in there. If we could, you know, get people the regulars to not park down on the
One
lower
of the
level.
issues with Kramer Park, and I've seen it happen, is that people who don't understand that there's parking way down in there, park in the beginning, and actually block the entrance off.
right.
And so some of that who's parked in there can't get out.
Yeah, I just noticed a sign there that says, do not block the entrance, because I can't imagine somebody driving in and just parking there, but apparently they do.
It's happened.
Yeah.
Human beings have an extraordinary
Yeah.
ability to surprise you.
Yeah, I know. And general assistance has slowed down considerably, and one good thing was the food left over from the retirement party was all taken to the Midcoast Hospitality House.
do we have any questions?
Just one question / comment about the school board election on August 2nd. We have a bunch of people on the ballot who didn't take out papers or want to run for this seat, and I don't know whether any of them have, now that they've been mentioned, have reconsidered it at all. And I would like to see at some point in the press something put out there where, you know, somebody who would wish to run and wanted to be a write-in candidate could do that for this election. I just don't want to go through all the work and expense in doing of an election and then come out with a winner and have somebody say, I'm not interested, I don't want to do it. And on the streaming, I'll say, if there's anybody on that list who truly would like to serve, it'd be very good if they could let people know that. And by extension, if there's somebody who would like to serve who is not on the list, if they let people know that, then they probably could garner enough write-in votes to get the seat.
Like 2.
Yeah. Yeah. hopefully there will be a distinct winner on this.
Well, I want it to be a
Election.
distinct winner, and I want it to be somebody who is willing
Yeah.
to serve. I mean, if we get a winner and the person is not willing to serve, then, and we
Then
go
just
down the
go to
list
the next one.
and we haven't gained anything, so.
Yeah.
That's, I'd like to see a little
Yeah.
more information about that.
Actually, that is a question I'd like to ask to the election clerk. What if somebody gets, say, 25 votes, and they decide not to serve? Does that invalidate the election, or does it then just go to the next highest recipient of votes?
I don't know the answer to that question. I haven't asked that, but I have been in touch with the school, and sent them the list of candidates. And if there's somebody there that they think would be interested or make a good candidate, then they could, maybe pursue that and get votes for that.
Okay. Interesting question then. Any further?
What's the limit of this board if, for instance, we come up with somebody who would like to be a write-in vote and is actually interested in the job, and having been on the school board for 3 years, it's,
Your name is on there.
no, my name is still on there, because I asked for,
Did write anything,
I didn't write anything down either, Jeff.
Yep.
and they went to the went to
Yeah.
the,
Just frame it, put it on the wall at home.
okay. But what kind of leeway does this board have in announcing and/or promoting a write-in candidate?
I don't think we would be
Okay.
advised to promote
Yeah,
a write-in candidate.
but we can certainly make public announcement that,
We can make the public announcement that there is the election
right,
and that there are these people running, and please come out and vote. But we should, because of the separation between the school board and our responsibilities to raise the funds for their taxes, that we shouldn't be endorsing a particular candidate or candidates, but rather just endorsing the fact that please vote.
right, I get that.
I think what we could do, on the other hand, though, is if a write-in candidate does emerge, or somebody emerges who's interested in serving, I think what we should do as a board is encourage them to speak to the press
Okay,
and make sure that they get the word out that,
Right.
yes, hey, I'm willing to serve and I need the write-in votes.
it would be a normal thing for us to do to announce that X, Y, and Z people had taken out papers prior to an
Well,
election.
in this case, nobody is taking out paper.
I understand that,
Oh,
but
okay.
is a person who's interested in running as a write-in an equivalent to someone who's taking out papers, and we say, this person, this person, this person are interested? I don't know the answer to that, but,
That's kind of,
It's a little
that's
sticky, I
one that's a
think.
little sticky to me. You know.
I'll contact the press tomorrow and let them know that, be sure that they have the names of everybody, which I know 2 of the papers do. And remind people that if they have somebody that is writing,
Or if anybody who is on the ballot wants to serve, if they could let people know that they're interested in serving, that would be an important piece of information for the voters to have.
Very good. Then we will now move to unfinished business. The one item that we have is to sign the warrant for the Tuesday, August 2nd, special town meeting warrant.
I move to approve and sign the Tuesday, August 6th, 2016 special town meeting warrant as presented.
second?
August 2nd.
I move an amendment to that to say August 2nd.
Sorry.
Second.
I'll withdraw the motion and remake the
Okay.
motion with August 2nd in place. Sorry about that.
I'll
With-
withdraw a second.
Okay, it's been
Reseconded.
removed and then reseconded, so it is now August 2nd, Tuesday. Further discussion?
No, I was getting ready to raise my hand.
All in favor? This is to inform the constable to make this announcement, and we have to sign that. Actually, if I recall, we need to sign this now, when everybody can see us.
I apologize for not bringing this up before. Is there any chance of moving the recreation item up sooner? When you asked for agenda changes, I wasn't thinking. Just so the chief and Suzanne don't have to sit here for
Oh,
any longer than they have to. If not, no biggie, but it was F, agenda item F.
I would entertain a motion to move it before the discussion of the police training reserve.
I would second that.
There's no motion, you have to make the motion.
Oh, I
So
have to
moved.
make the motion?
It's been moved,
So moved.
Second.
moved and seconded. All in favor? Okay, it still will be after the Opera House Committee annual presentation, because that was already scheduled.
That's great,
so.
that's great.
And everybody signed it? Yep. You'd pass it back. Thank you. We'll now move on to, there is no public hearing, so we'll move on to new business. First thing we have to do is acknowledge a gift to the town. It was a bequest to the Library Endowment Fund in the amount of $115,000 from the estate of Margaret B. Oliver. This is very generous contribution or donation to the endowment for the library to support the collection and those activities. I'd appreciate if somebody, well, actually, I'll make the motion here, that we send a letter of thanks and our appreciation to the estate of Margaret B. Oliver for this generous contribution, and that we were very appreciative of this largesse, I think is the word.
And I'm pretty sure at the very beginning of that, you said part of the motion is to accept it,
Oh, yes.
as well as give
Yes,
thanks.
you're right. You know, this, we will accept, and we
knew I
will
heard
give
that, see.
generous thanks.
I second the motion to accept the bequest by the Library Endowment Fund in the amount of $115,000 received from the estate of Margaret B. Oliver, and to send a note of thanks for the incredible generosity.
A very
How
large
does that
note of
work?
thanks.
Yes.
Perfect.
So, no further discussion? All in favor? If you would please prepare that, Mr. Town Manager. My understanding is that the estate had been making contributions over a number of years, but now has decided to clear out the remainder of the estate, and this was the portion that she had directed to go to Rockport. That apparently had made contributions to a number of libraries, and very generous contributor to the libraries and the literacy programs around the state and area. So,
I think they had a trust fund that they were
yeah.
making annual donations of the income from the trust fund, and they decided, the trustees decided they didn't want to manage it anymore,
Yeah.
so they would dispense with all of the principal, which
So,
makes a nice, large
yep.
sum donation for us.
So, and the library committee is aware of it, that that's for their endowment. We have no committee resignations or applications to deal with this month. Our next item is the Opera House Committee Annual Presentation. And we have the chair of that committee here.
Hello, everyone.
John, welcome.
Hi, thank you very much. So, annual report, a number of items I'll move through here. Well, recently in the building, we've had some improvements to the air conditioning system, new controls, which work on the air conditioning system has been something we've been pursuing for a whole number of years, so it's really nice to have some progress on that, and the controls in particular were an item of focus that we knew needed some attention, so that is in place. It's my understanding that the longer term, there may be some consideration of looking at the condition of the equipment and assessing what its future is. Apparently, it's nearing the end of its projected lifespan, but it's working, so I think that's something that may be studied in the upcoming years, we'll say. Along the lines of what's happening with the air conditioning, there's some recent work into looking into the size and number of return air grills in the auditorium, which it's been my little pet peeve for about 7 years that we take a look at this. And I understand there's this engineering study underway. Isn't that correct, Rick, that we have?
I think it's been done.
It's been done. Okay.
One of the things that they found, I think, we talked about this at my manager's report, was that, that's old school technology, was to put the returns on the floor and the AC on the ceiling. And, one of the suggestions was that it would be, better if the returns were on the ceiling and the AC was down closer to the floor, flip-flopped or something, but they've pretty much done that analysis.
So the committee hasn't seen that yet, but in brief, there's work underway in terms of optimizing the air conditioning in the auditorium, which for many years has functioned, but not to the desired optimum that we're seeking for a full house on a warm day. But I think there's every indication that the system can perform with some tweaking. And actually, Terry Leah and I spent some time just this past week, looking at some of the grills and discussing some of the specific options for that, some of which are incredibly inexpensive, like a couple $100 for grills might make an improvement to the capacity of the system. So that's in the works. Mentioning Terry Leah, I think you all know who she is, but that's something that's happened in the past year, just to report on what's happened. So we now have really terrific guidance and presence for the Opera House with the creation of her position and her efforts since it was late last fall, November, is that right? So the hope is that the Opera House will function more efficiently and that we will recognize more opportunities for its utilization, which is something that we've been studying, and we think the building is used, depending on how you want to look at it, maybe 10 or 20% of the time. I mean, there's no absolute number of how many hours the building could be used, but clearly there's an opportunity to get more community use as well as potentially more revenue. And with the new website for the Opera House, I think that's looking promising for increasing the use of the space, both spaces, in fact, this space as well. I think you're all aware of the exterior work that took place over the past year or so. So the building is now in really excellent shape from the roof on down, and should be good for many years to come. And in combination with the insulation project that happened just a few years ago, from my perspective, it seems like the building has really gotten to a place where it's in excellent shape and should be in great shape for a long time to come. So the town is really protecting its asset, and I think using it more efficiently, particularly with the insulation. One of the projects we're working on right now is trying to find a place to store the Genie lift, which is the lift that gets people up to the lights. Again, anticipating that there might be more groups using the facility, and there might be groups interested in directing the lighting. And certainly for things as mundane as changing bulbs, it's been decided after kicking around a variety of ideas, it made sense to keep the lift right here. It's safer to not be moving it back and forth to another location. And so that's another item that we looked at recently, is trying to find a way to tuck it in under the stair where there's currently a janitor's closet that doesn't really have much in it other than a mop sink. So we're looking at some adjustments to that space to try to tuck it in. And in fact, while we're doing that, Terry Leah is going to look into the cost of a replacement lift that may obviate the need for making any modifications to that space, depending on what these things run. Something more compact. I haven't ridden this lift, but I've heard that it's an interesting experience. Jeff, you could probably comment on that. But
It's a thrill a minute.
okay, so we have it and it's there, and we're trying to find a place to make it disappear because it's pretty bulky and unsightly. Right now, refinishing of the floors is being considered. They're pretty worn out, and it's definitely time for that to be done. So we're talking about getting bids for that work. And I thought it would be good if we informed ourselves, maybe by, for example, consulting with what happens at the gymnasium floor at the high school, which is kept in very good condition, and ascertaining how often they refinish it so they don't get to the condition that we're experiencing upstairs. Is that annual? Is it every couple of years? But so that's under study.
We also have the subfloor issue that they don't have, in that our subfloors sprung and unsprung.
So it's a more active
Well,
floor.
it's it's not, it doesn't start out as flat and as wonderful.
Yes, right.
That's what the problem is.
What else has happened recently? Well, we've tried something a little different in terms of communications between the committee and the town, which has been something that I've I don't want to say frustrated, but felt could be improved upon, and that we tend to sit in our little group and talk amongst ourselves, and I'm never quite sure how the information is disseminated from there. And I know Jeff is the liaison, but it's hard to tell from my position what happens to the information. So we recently had a meeting with Rick and talked about some of the specifics. And the thought was that maybe when we come to particular issues that we would just try to set up a meeting after a particular meeting, let's say, to try to ensure that there was a good line of communication with the town. And I think lighting is something else that we're studying, both on the exterior of the building to try to get a little brighter and to give it a little more pop and presence. So there's discussion of maybe getting a lighting consultant to help us out with that. And also looking at stage lighting, which is quite dated. We've received some proposals on how it might be upgraded, but it clearly needs more study. We're operating with equipment that's from a whole nother era. So a little better than kerosene, but not much. Well, that's what I have on my list. So any questions for me? Or Terry Leah, do you have anything to add to that?
That's the gist of it. We talked about trailers, getting a trailer to store the chairs in.
Oh, yeah, right. As a way to store the chairs. Having a,
Time for Randy to have, or our custodian to take the chairs from point A to point B.
right. Looking at more efficient ways of handling the movement of chairs, which is constant. So that's another item under consideration. Yeah.
It's good, because that's a cost saver over time. If
Well,
you're saving
that's-
a per hour
Yeah, that'd be
rate,
pretty fast.
if you're saving the
That's-
per hour rate.
That's the hope. That's the hope.
I
Yeah.
know we have an item, it's not on our agenda tonight, but it's in the near future about the possibility of adjusting rates during the quiet season. Has the committee talked about that at all?
We have actually. And Terry Leah, you've implemented that to some degree. Isn't that correct?
Yeah, we talked, should I come up there? So in one of our recent committee meetings, we talked about introducing a lower rate during maybe the month of November, not necessarily during all of the low activity months, but just as a way to generate talk about the Opera House and invite new clients to the Opera House too. So, I was looking at the month of November because it's coming at the end of our busy time. It's getting close to the holidays, so people would still be interested or be around to use it. I wanted to limit how much we're offering this discounted rate because we already have rather low rates, in my opinion. It's not something I would like to become known for, these very low rates for a long period of time. But would like to use it just to generate a buzz for a brief time. Yes.
What are our rates compared to other opera houses owned by municipalities locally here? Just generally speaking, we're lower, but
We're lower.
decent amount lower?
Oh,
or-
yeah, like by half or some,
And
The
do we
net
realize that
cost-
as additional traffic, or do we just do that to simply get people in through the door?
In my opinion, I think part of it's as a gift to the town, because that's what we're here for, is for the town of Rockport. But it's a good question. That's one that probably goes back to, we've had these prices for a while, from what I understand, so it's a good question. I'm not sure why we're not raising it.
it's a combination. I mean, historically, it's sort of the way we grew up. We grew up as saying, oh, no, it's okay, you can come in here like this. But we've added considerably to our sophistication
Capabilities,
and our
yeah.
capability. But we do get a lot of clients who have either considered or have had experiences at other opera houses come in and say, you know what, you're a good size for us. Size is always the first thing, but we're very flexible, and we end up being half, sometimes 60% less, sometimes 70% less, and we some of the other places will have a higher personnel cost and will add on, you move this computer, that it's not that bad, but so we're cheap and friendly, and we want to stay that way, I think is the notion, but we also don't want to be losing our shirt.
I'm sold.
There was a an issue brought up last year by the Waldorf Ashwood School about the cost to rent the facility because they have practices and setups that run over a number of period of days, and they were looking at, can they get a special rate, for charitable and nonprofit organizations, school organizations, that was raised at the time, and because they've come to us a couple years as a select board to ask for a reduction in their fee, and we're wondering at some point, can we get something written into the policy so we can say, no, that's what it is, and that's where we're staying, as opposed to say, oh my God, that's so high and we can't afford
Well,
it.
you'll notice that they came to the softies on this board rather
Yeah.
than to the committee. But, yeah, that is an issue, and one, having benefited from a one-time reduction, one, you really would like to have it a second time and a third time, but it's a problem.
But
and-
maybe this is as much making sure that they know what the
Yeah.
rates are when they come in, as opposed to them, oh, we didn't know we had to pay for that.
Well, one thing I would add to this is in the contract, we itemize the list of prices, and the nonprofit, Rockport nonprofit, get the lowest rate possible, which is what Ashwood did qualify for. So they're already getting the lowest rate. Perhaps I would suggest maybe instead of always taking it down to how much time they spend here, they only pay $700. Go the other direction. You can have a $700 discount during this week that you're producing this, and that way we have some kind of a balance.
But it would be good for us to hear from the committee, I think, what the scope of those discounts should be and when we should consider them. Because we have to make the decision, but it would be nice to have input from the committee so that we know, well, here comes this case, and then 9 months later, another one comes along, and oh yeah, we had the one back there, but gee, I don't remember what that was, and things like that, so.
That would be good.
That'd
We
be,
can
that
edit.
would be helpful.
Are you talking about on a case-by-case basis, or just as a general
Just some general
policy?
guidelines, I mean, because we do want to be available for, community events that are based in town, like the Ashwood Waldorf School. I don't think any of us had a problem with giving them a break on the rate. And to give them credit, they came back and they budgeted more for their production this year than they had in the previous year. So they did pay us more than they did in the previous year. But just to have some guidance from the committee as to how we should handle those situations would be helpful.
All right, yeah.
Definitely. We can add that to the committee
Yeah.
agenda.
Do you feel like it's appropriate that groups like that could come to the select board? I mean, obviously the Opera House Committee doesn't have any authority in that respect, but do you feel like it's appropriate that they would approach the select board to
I
make
mean,
such a request?
we can accept or reject their request, and
Yeah.
so that's the procedure right now. But if we had a published, list of rates and even if it wasn't, here's how much discount you can have, just some guidance as to what sort of things. And I think in this case, it was not so much that they needed a break on the rate of the time they were having their performances, but they wanted to use more time for rehearsal.
Yeah.
If I'm not
Yeah,
mistaken.
yeah.
So
That's
more of a package deal in a sense.
Yeah, that sort of thing. And it
Mhm.
was at a time of year, I don't think, when anything else was going
Yeah.
on, so it was not a burden, I don't believe.
Sounds reasonable.
Typically
Yep.
April, May.
Yeah, so just anything that helps us in those situations would be good.
Well, it sounds like what I'm hearing from this is the committee has decided amongst ourselves that making this facility available to the community is really a number one priority. I mean, the town uses it first and foremost for meetings such as this, but second to that, just trying to get the community to know that it's here and to be able to use it more and encourage that. And then probably the next tier would be trying to get those who are interested in renting it for whatever functions, weddings and what have you. And
I
that's,
mean, the taxpayers support this building, so the
Mhm.
taxpayers should have first right of refusal to use it aside from town business and to be able to use it at the most economical rate
Right.
possible for them.
Right.
But then, as you say, the other piece of it is to bring cultural events to Rockport that also benefit the people of the
Yeah.
town. But if there are rates that admission is charged for,
Mhm.
then we need
Mhm.
to generate more revenue.
well, that's good to hear. I think we're all in alignment on that point.
I'd like to say, he said that really nicely, so whatever Ken just said, that's my opinion too.
Okay, very good.
Yeah.
And, okay.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just saying, the other thing that John hasn't mentioned yet is that we all donated some teeth, and we pulled teeth, and we've got our bylaws
Oh, thanks, Jeff.
signed and
Yeah. How could I forget that?
approved and all that. So.
Okay, then
And-
if you'd have them presented to us for
So don't feel bad
the
about the fact
25th,
that we
and
don't
we
yet.
can-
They've been going for
we can
years.
approve them then.
And one of the highlights of that is that the very first part of the bylaws say, you know, it's a mission statement for the Opera House, that, and it reiterates the points we just talked about.
Okay. A couple of, I've got a couple of things. You know, the painting, you know, if you can work with the town manager and when the capital improvement committee gets online, let's work to keeping the painting up to date. So
The-
that
the
we're
maintenance of
not
it.
all of a sudden, you know, well, it's all flaking off, we have to do another big, huge thing. But, you know, how do we stay abreast of it so we maintain the good looks that it has now? And I remember you talking about getting new lighting out in front.
Yeah, it came up really towards the tail end of the whole exterior upgrade. And in respect to painting, I mean, that is a good topic for us to revisit. And I think it's particularly challenging because the building requires such extensive staging. It's not quite as simple as asking a bunch of guys to get up on ladders. So there's that large upfront expense that has to be amortized over a number of years. And I think that weighs into how the maintenance cycle will play out.
Yeah, and I think for the refinishing of the floor, that's probably gonna have to be a budget item.
I think, well, we're hoping that, I'm hoping that we'll have enough money in the reserve that we can come back to the board and ask the board to use
Okay.
some of the money out of the reserve funds to get that done, that and the lighting.
Okay. And
hoping.
Did I understand the emails that went back and forth with David Jackson, that there are plants now that are gonna be put in over along the
Yes,
side?
we're gonna be planting along the side here. Don't ask me what kind of plants. There's
He said
plants.
something about arborvitae, but that doesn't sound
There's
right.
plants.
Yeah, they're plants.
There's
No, it was
green
something
things
clever. It was
going in
something
there.
more clever than that.
Arborvitae is what architects put when they say put plant here.
Yeah.
Oh, okay,
But that's
There'll
the
be green
Parks
things.
Committee, not the.
yeah,
Right.
that's the part, I was just
Right.
mentioning that there will be soon plants over here. So.
Sounds great.
Brendan?
I just wanted to ask the town manager, some of the improvements like the painting would seem logical to plug into the capital
Oh,
improvement.
absolutely, yep.
plan.
Mhm. And one of,
Do we get their input about others?
about other items,
Well, the air conditioning is another very logical one. How
yeah,
does that?
that'll most likely come from Mike, well, it'll come through Terry and Mike. One of the things with the painting is, Mike and I have already talked about, the front of the building is what you see first, and we could start putting some money away. The front of the building is easy to paint in comparison to the rest of the building.
The sidewalks and you build this up.
Right, yeah, well, you just get one of those man lift things, and they can do the front of the
Your
building.
magic
and
genie
keep-
out there.
They can keep the front of the building looking pretty good for the first go-round. And then, you know, at least the front of the building will look, we can keep that fresh a lot easier than the rest of the building. The sides of the building and the back, sides and the back are the part that are the real tough part. But it's all that stuff is capital improvement stuff, and the AC unit, if it does I mean, I'm a little concerned with the AC. Terry's gonna turn the AC on, tomorrow you're gonna turn it on?
It's on right now. It's
Upstairs?
scheduled for tomorrow too, yeah.
Oh.
Main Media is upstairs using it.
Who's it?
Main Media.
Oh,
is-
main media's upstairs? But tomorrow's supposed to be hot and humid, and it'll be a good time to test it and let it cook up there and see if it keeps up at a temperature that's reasonable. Because I am a little concerned that the AC unit,
But as John pointed out, it's not the same as when you have a crowd in there.
no, it isn't,
Yeah,
no.
that's
all
right, that's the
generating
test.
heat.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it really should be able to keep up with a full house of people, lights, equipment running, regardless of what temperature it started off with. It's got to be able to match that BTU load.
Right.
So-
And part of that is also operator error in that we have, you know, people who rent upstairs who will then fling the doors open
Yeah.
with the air conditioning being on and things like that. So there is a training component to this. Or a whipping component, whichever.
Okay.
Because you can literally feel, when you walk by and the AC's on in that room, you walk by on the sidewalk, you can feel the air conditioning on your feet. You can feel it just running down, it's like water running down the steps out onto the sidewalk.
Any further questions? John,
Okay,
Terry, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We'll now go to the change, and we will discuss and vote to authorize money for the recreation field reserve account. We have that here.
We have some a newly elected member of the Recreation Committee here, as well as Chief Peasley, because he's intimately involved in some of the youth leagues. His children play as well. So we have some people, if you wished to ask some questions about the conditions of the fields, the discussions we've had, the work that's been done. Rick has been very helpful in us getting it to this point, and what we were hoping for was the approval of the not more than $20,000, so we can continue to work on this and have those funds available as soon as we get all of our acts together.
Okay, well then, what are we going to authorize this money to accomplish? And I don't know if, if you want your board members to,
I would love to hear them speak, because they spend more time at that fields than I do, and I spend a lot of time there, so they're.
One of the things that's a little confusing is in the motion, which,
Yeah.
we want to, the tennis courts, we want to keep the tennis courts while they're part of the conversation. What you're voting on tonight is not to do anything with the tennis courts.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but we haven't heard a motion.
Well, the motion's in your package.
Yeah,
Suggested.
I read it, but,
And it's-
No
that-
motion's been
but
presented.
the public hasn't heard anything.
Right, but the motion, the motion does talk about the tennis courts, and it really shouldn't,
suggested
the
motion.
suggested
Well, that
motion.
was gonna be my question, is that,
No.
so resurfacing the tennis courts is not in the plan for this year?
No.
I will say
But
though,
because the-
minor improvements to it. There's some weeds growing up in the cracks. Weed removal, filling the cracks, and just sealing those surfaces so there's no longer divots there. There's not a crack that's more than 3/4, maybe an inch wide at the widest. It is an issue, but we don't have enough money set aside now to completely repurpose the
And
tennis courts.
I'll come back to the board with a proposal for the tennis courts separately from this question, because there's two questions. We're not ready on the tennis court one.
Yeah, because I'm not a tennis player, but I've heard through the years that the tennis courts had deteriorated to the point that they were not safe, and that would be a concern for me. If we know they're unsafe and then we let them ride another year and there's an incident out there, then we have an issue.
We're not gonna be able to rebuild them. We don't have enough money to reconstruct a tennis court. So our option would be, Mike is looking into, our option is to doing some repair that may get us, 5 to 8 years more of using them and making them safe. They won't be tournament quality tennis courts, but they'd be safe tennis courts.
That's what I'm concerned about, is the safety.
You're right, we can, Mike is working on that now.
If I recall correctly, that's about a $60,000.
No, the estimate now is, that was one of the concerns. When Owen brought this to me, I said, well, no, the court, this money was set up for the courts.
Right.
Well, when Mike went and got the estimate from the MRC, which is another MRC, which has to do with,
Not the trash people.
right, not the trash
Group,
people.
not the
Not the
Midcoast
recreation
Take care of
Recreation.
your
Yeah.
little tennis court.
No, the estimate that they got, was bumping up against $100,000. So, because of the fencing, the fencing adds, I think, about $30,000 to the cost.
Jeepers,
Yeah, the fencing is a chunk, and.
Taking it away and putting it back.
Yes, right, and.
Oh, and that's not even replacing the fencing, that's just taking our fencing down and then putting our fencing back
No,
up
I
again?
guess you might as well replace it.
Okay,
All the poles
okay.
have to come out and everything.
Okay.
So that adds about, I think the number was about $30,000. So,
Tennis.
so we're still a ways away from being able to get that done. If we had enough money to get it done this year, I'd be saying, Owen and I would be disagreeing. And I'd be saying, we need to get those tennis courts done this year. But we're still many years away from getting them done. And so if we can reallocate some of that money with the idea that we'll reallocate money to get the tennis courts back up and back into the right funding pattern, that would also work.
And if I may, one other thing that I've found while exploring this is that the only budget line I was able to find that was specific to field maintenance was 3626 in the Parks and Rec budget, irrigation and field maintenance. It had $0 put into it last year, the year before, going back to 2008. So the money that we should have been putting aside to improve the field specific to that budget line hasn't had any resources put into it since 2008. The fields are in extremely poor condition. If you're concerned about health and quality issues, there's, in my opinion only, a higher probability that there would be an accident, medium to higher, with the use of the ball fields. The fact that the ball is harder, the kids are younger, and the fields are more crooked than the tennis courts are. So if health and safety is one of our bigger concerns, I think that allocating this money to an area where we have not been putting any money into it at all is an imperative right now.
This is one of those with a little history, that when I came into the budget committee 12 years ago, I think, that the Little League and Babe Ruth League were doing a lot of self-maintenance out there. They were out there raking the fields and leveling them and doing all of that. Town people were just mowing. An irrigation system had been put in at some point and was used. The town was providing the water, paying for the water. At some point, it was determined they didn't need the water. I think it was, a couple of very wet years, so they didn't need to keep irrigating it. And then the pesticide ordinance was passed, and so, the concern on putting anything onto those other than what fell out of the sky. And somewhere along the line, the Little League, Babe Ruth League parents and teams stopped doing what they had been doing, and we just never caught on to it. And so the line was zero because that's what we had been putting in it. The money that had been on there was for irrigation. And then all of a sudden it wasn't needed. And I don't remember why. The reason was that we didn't need to continue to irrigate there, other than we may have had a couple of wet seasons, and so the next year it just got zeroed.
It may have been cost too, because it doesn't take long on running that irrigation, because we pay for everything that goes through the meter.
Especially if there's a leak or something.
Yeah, so you pump a lot of water on those fields when you're irrigating them, and it doesn't, when I was in New Hampshire, we owned our municipal water system as well, and we were putting so much water on the fields that it was cheaper for us to drill our own well and put our own pump in. On site than it was to,
We consider that.
We have water on site,
Right.
don't we?
that
We've
might-
got hoses and stuff right there.
No,
On
But
the-
that comes
Where's
through
it
main
coming
water.
from? It's
It comes
coming
from
Oh,
main
that's
water.
right,
We
thank
pay for
you,
that.
thank you.
We do have, Megan and I looked at the end of the year budget and what we have next year, and we think there's about $8,000 between what we'll be asking you to encumber this year and what we could use out of next year's budget to get some of the work done on the ball fields. So we think there's about it's $7,526.92 or something like that with it, Megan came up with. Ballpark, $8,000. That will give us a chunk of money to get some of the work done. And then it's a matter of prioritizing the other pieces of, the other things that need to get done. The irrigation system hasn't run, from what I understand, in 7 or 8 years. And it's not, at this point, it's not the critical piece. The critical piece is getting that Little League field done, the Babe Ruth field done. And I don't know that there's a lot of work on the,
Touch-ups only on the softball
Softball
field. The
field?
softball field is in relatively good condition. It would need some work, but nowhere near as
every
much as
field
the other
needs
ones.
work,
Yep.
I need to understand what quantity of funding are we being asked to approve? And is it the $7,500?
No.
Or is it the
No.
20,000?
you'll
So where's the rest of that funding coming from?
be asked to encumber about $3,000 next month when you go through the encumbrances. you don't need to approve the $5,000. You've already approved that in the budget. So there's already money to do some work on those ball fields. The encumbered money, you've got to approve carrying that forward. And then some amount of money, up to about $20,000 total, would be coming out of that reserve fund. I don't think it's gonna take $20,000 to come out of the reserve
And
fund.
also that 20,000 less out the money that we already have allocated and the encumbered, that's what we could potentially take from that reserve. So all told, we're approving 20,000, some from funds we already have existing and some from this reserve account. Where this is extremely useful for us is our ability on the rec committee to work on some of these quotes that we have, go through some of the nuances, like Bill was saying, the pesticide stuff. We have to start working with sports fields and saying, your proposal does pesticides, we just have to swap that out for a different.
So, what I'd like to say about this is that I don't in any way object to this expenditure of funding. I do object to learning about it in this way, and I understand we're working toward getting this kind of stuff on the capital improvement plan, but this feels reactionary.
It
and,
is.
And it should not be. This is utterly predictable maintenance. So this is us not doing our jobs on an annual basis.
As I said, somewhere along the line, it slipped from our perspective.
And
And this has happened as a result.
I mean, there's stuff that we're not gonna be able to predict on the capital improvement plan, like that drainage thing that's going on under Rockport Marine. We're never gonna see that. This has gotta be the easiest thing in the world to predict.
And this really doesn't even come into capital, I mean, the tennis courts do, and we're robbing from the tennis courts for a moment, and then the promise is we're upping the annual contribution to that. But this is really maintenance that was being taken care of by another entity, i.e. the
No, you can't have it both ways, though. We have to either decide that this is important enough for the town to
Right.
take it on,
right.
or decide that it's an unreasonable amount of work for the town to take on, and make a very clear explanation that it is expected, we expect, that the users of the facilities are going to contribute to the maintenance of the facilities.
But
What
I,
we're doing right now is basically saying you can not maintain them, and then we will come and
Rescue
swoop in
you.
at the end and rescue you, and I object to that.
no, I was just saying that this is not a capital improvement, but this is maintenance gone awry in that the last budget cycle, the committee or someone didn't say, hey, things have changed, we need this in the
The
maintenance.
ball fields need regular maintenance.
Right.
Annual maintenance should be part of the budget system.
Yeah.
The tennis courts, we had already
you.
established as it was gonna be a capital improvement, and we're setting aside money. The thing is that the last estimate we had has turned out now to be hopefully inadequate because the cost has gone up. Now, that's not what we're
So
doing
going into
tonight.
contingency funding for that, for doing the best job that you can to anticipate costs and finding out that you were wrong, that is fine.
Yeah,
But putting off general maintenance for years and years and years, and then
that's the
paying
point.
for it like this, is not the way to run a
and
town,
we
in my
need,
opinion.
we need to correct that. And, some of it is catching up here, but some of it also is realizing it when we come to the budget cycle next spring, that we need to be aware that we've got to contribute something here, but we also have to consider that the users of the fields have to contribute as well. So, Owen?
So, another thing that I've found through trying to work with the kind of newly created rec committee and diving deeper into this is there is for sure enough blame to go around in a lot of different areas with a lot of different groups and a lot of different people. What we've found ourselves in is a really poor spot, and I can't disagree with anything that you've said, Brendan. We are playing catch up. This is not the way that we should be doing it. And one of the bigger conversations that we've been having as a rec committee is, okay, we're now on it. How can we ensure that this does not happen again? Because yes, one would like to go and try to figure out where this all degraded. It seemed to be a continuation over a handful of years. But one of our biggest goals is after we get the fields back up to snuff, structure the relationship between the town and the youth leagues so everyone knows whose responsibility is whose, what money is generated by the youth leagues, what funds are coming from the town, how can we ensure that their volunteerism is balanced out with our funding, what funding, so really trying to dive deep into that and make sure, because it's really been kind of sad to understand what these fields, this entire sporting complex used to look like, and the condition that it's in right now. And I feel bad that we have to ask for such a large sum of money, but we're playing catch-up for some delinquencies.
And I will second what Brendan said with the caveat that all we can do now is look forward. We can look back and say, yes, we need to make changes in how we budget things in the future. We can't decide that because we did it poorly in the past that we have to, we can't rectify it. We have the means to rectify it, so looking forward, we have to do that, in my opinion. Question for Owen. A minute ago, you mentioned the $20,000 number and said some of that would come from the reserve and some of it would come from the encumbrances. If that's the case, then I don't think we should be approving $20,000 to come totally from the reserve. So I guess I would.
It actually seemed like a bit of this motion with the tennis courts, in the way that this motion
Well,
is
forget the
a
motion.
little
Yeah,
funky.
forget
It is- the
What
motion
we-
is funky.
What we need is, the motion that I will make when it comes time to it is to approve some money to work from the reserve to do the ball field repair, period. Tennis court's not gonna be involved.
Yep.
But the question is, what's the number need to be? Because you mentioned the 20,000 as though that was the total cost, but then there was money available from other sources. And I don't want to approve 20,000 from the reserve if we only need 12,000, if the other 8 is gonna cover it.
I heard there's 5 in the budget already.
There's 5 we can use in the budget from in this year's budget.
And what budget line is that coming from?
It's had two
I got my
different names.
book here.
Special, oh, do you?
Yeah, dude.
Well, it's not gonna come necessarily from a specific line, Owen, because when we approve the budgets at town meeting, we're approving the whole department's budget. And then it's the town manager has the prerogative to move
But it
things
was
around
under
from line to
special,
line.
it was special, no, not special assessments.
It would have been under the recreation
It
line.
was in recreation.
So here are, so there's the irrigation and maintenance,
Nope.
general repairs and maintenance. We had a,
Specialty work, 4,000 there, and then there was 4,000 in specialty work, and she
Encumbered
said,
from previous year.
yeah, and then 3,000 from the other 30. Yeah, there was 4,000 and 3,000.
Is 3 from?
Oh, and general
this last
repair.
year?
Oh, and general repair and maintenance here.
which is not that number, it's
19.
actually 19.
19, yeah.
So
And then
it's
there's,
two.
for next year's budget, there's another amount, are there additional
That's
amounts?
this year's budget.
That's this year's.
budget.
But for the upcoming budget, is there money in those lines?
That's this
that's-
budget.
We are in the upcoming budget.
We're in that budget now.
But
And-
Well, that's right.
So we're talking about
actually-
encumbered-
So what's the
Right.
encumbered amount then?
And the
I guess?
encumbered is gonna be about $3,000, 25, 20, what was it, 20, she said 29 something?
So is that,
You were there,
is that
right?
close to $10,000?
that's
So you said
8,900,
2,900?
89. So that leaves 11.
We have.
When do we get
have
access
ba-
to the encumbered stuff? That, my
That'll
only
be next
concern
month.
is that we get the bill from
You know
Sportsfield,
what?
we scrambled, we did everything, and then we somehow
I mean,
have to tell
I'm
them.
willing to leave a little wiggle room in the amount, but I don't wanna put a big amount in there that we
Yeah.
know is way too
Yeah.
big to begin with.
Okay. Brendan, you were gonna say?
I'm okay with this either way. I'd like these numbers to be prepared correctly in the future, before we vote on these.
Does the amount, the total amount we're talking about, does that include irrigation too? No.
We do not have numbers for several items
Mhm.
that need to be addressed at the fields, such as irrigation, such as the electrical,
Mhm.
such as some of the chain link fencing
Mhm.
that is falling over on the fields. What we have numbers for specifically are the sports field numbers, quotes to get the Little League baseball field and the Babe Ruth baseball field.
I'm sorry, I keep forgetting. We have people at home.
Okay, so there are several items that we do not have numbers for. We have just not had time to put numbers together. What we have numbers for are general estimates from Sportsfield to fix the infield and outfield of the Babe Ruth baseball field and the Little League baseball field. the Little League themselves put several thousands of dollars into the softball field. That is why that field needs much less maintenance to date. It is also, in my opinion, something that they should maybe not have had to do. These fields have gotten to the point where they are dangerous. We had to, as a Babe Ruth League, we had to consider canceling our season and moving all of our games to a different location. And luckily, the town very quickly swooped in and took care of our safety concerns. A quick Band-Aid, as you say. So our numbers include infield and outfield prep work that come to about $15,000. It does not include, like I said, we have electrical problems. Half of our field is not getting electricity. We have fencing that's falling down. What other issues? I mean, we have some structural issues in some of our dugouts. So we haven't had time to get those kinds of numbers together. So the up to 20,000 is not some astronomical figure that we would never come close to needing. The fields have been neglected for many, many years and need to get back up to workable conditions. So would you like to? Jason can speak to a little bit more about the actual condition of the fields themselves and the safety concerns.
So I've been over there with Owen, Mike, Rick several times. The 15,000, in my opinion, and some others, is probably the most important thing. The condition of the actual playing surface where these young kids are playing every night, every day. I've personally seen 2 kids get hit in the head with a ball. One ended up in the ER because of the difference in the fields and the mounds. There's sprinkler heads that are exposed now. The bases are all uneven. The bases are not exact distances. The infield, if you look at the difference from the dirt to the grass, in some spots is over 6 inches high, a difference. So what she's referring to is digging it up, relining it, getting all the measurements back, and leveling the field to a good playing surface. Keep in mind, though, by doing this, it's not just Little League that's benefiting. It's also the Penn Bay Soccer. We use that 2+ months in the fall. On some weekends we're there 2 days, all day long. The kids are going to be playing soccer on these fields. It's the same fields that the kids are going to be running back and forth on. The fencing right now, replacing it, I don't think obviously that's an option right now, but there's one of the current gates on one of the dugout is being held closed with a stick and duct tape. That's how far the fences have moved. If that fence comes open during a game for any such reason, a kid's running or sliding and hits that, we're going to have a major problem. The Babe Ruth field, I know I spent 8 hours there one day digging the whole infield up. We replaced all the bases. We replaced the rubber itself, but the irrigation was sticking out of the ground over a foot. We ended up ripping it out of the ground just so that the Babe Ruth could at least get that game played, because the other team was refusing to even play. So I know there was a bunch of us there that whole day. So there is electrical, there's a lot of problems, but the most important thing is getting the playing surfaces safe for the kids to play on. Understanding it's been since 2008, money's gone into the budget. To me, that is the biggest thing. I think to Brendan's point is there should be funding. If it's a town property, if the town's going to continue to keep it and let the public use it, it needs to be maintained. Whether it's public works or it's hired out, I don't know, but there needs to be funding in there to maintain it. If you can get it back to where it should be, make an agreement with Babe Ruth, Penn Bay Travel Soccer, the Little League. We're all willing to work together. We have a great group of parents right now. We have a brand new president in Little League, Julie Brown. She's very proactive. I think we can work with you guys. I think last year Little League spent over between $5,000 and $8,000 out of their funding, which obviously their funding is very little. They did a bunch of fundraising to buy all new fences. So Little League's paying for all the fences that are there right now. I think some of the bases were replaced by Little League. The paint that's put on the fields paid for Little League. So Little League is doing a ton of fundraising just to get by to do this.
And Little League is limited to how many fundraising.
Right, they are very limited on what they can do per year. Instead of buying new uniforms that the kids are not getting, the money's been going back into the fields.
And then also with the concession stand, it's sometimes difficult to raise some funds from a concession stand that only has half electricity.
Correct.
And is questionable sometimes.
You go ahead.
Yeah, so the plan to bring in these folks called sports,
Sports fields in Maine, basically, that is their only job, is
Right.
they build sports fields. We've
Do-
got
do
quotes
they-
from other entities as well.
So this is fairly major in terms of leveling things out. Is that like you get the go ahead? That happens 10 days from now, and it knocks it
What
out
I
for
had
3
mentioned to
weeks?
Rick is they would prefer to do it at the end of August. That's the best time for them to put this field in. It gives time for the infield part, not the outfield where soccer is, but the infield would get done immediately, which is in late August, early fall. It's the best time to do it. It gives time for everything to grow and to take, and then they can come back and pull the clips out, and then when spring comes, everything will be level. I think the gentleman that came from Sportsfield said there's almost a 3.5-foot difference from the infield to the backstop, which obviously it's supposed to be
3.5
perfect.
feet?
3.5 feet.
From where?
From out at the pitcher's mound, not on the pitcher's mound, behind it, to where home plate is, where it drops down to the fence. It's sunk so much. It's a
So
almost
he's
3.5
pitching
foot
high. Everybody's.
elevation change.
Yeah.
Yeah,
All right, so it's a
Yeah.
project that'll be in 2 stages and will be finished by next.
They
summer.
come in, they bring their guys down, their equipment, and it doesn't take them long. I don't remember his time, but when he told me it's like 4 or 5 days. They rip it out one day, and then they start measuring and they do their thing, and they'll do the same thing at Babe Ruth the following week or within that same week. I'm not sure.
This is, I want to make an observation here, and, before we get to motions, that a good reason for the Recreation Committee is to develop an estimate of what the costs are going to be for the following year, so that when we get into the budget season, this is January through March and into April, that authoritative information comes to the select board, and before that even to the town manager through department heads, as to what needs to be done in the upcoming year. And when I say upcoming year, starts July 1. What needs to be done before the following June 30th or the following spring season, so that we can budget it. If we don't know that there's a need, we don't put it in the budget, and that's why we've gotten into this situation. And we need to get this corrected and moving it forward in a responsible manner, so.
And I would like to take some of the blame on this. I know that I've been on for over a year now, and I've been tasked out with standing up the rec committee. It's been a difficult task. They've not been functioning for a long, long time. I'm extremely happy that Suzanne has come on. I feel like we're now well-rounded out, and these recommendations that you're talking about is what we've been talking about. Like, it's been the lack of a rec committee saying, we really would like you all to be doing this.
Well, that's gonna be your task over the next handful of months.
I just did it. I got her. She's here.
Okay,
No, but the committee's task.
I know, yeah.
Committee's
Yeah.
task Is gonna be, just as,
Yeah.
as the chair has stated, is that we need a good concrete
Yes.
budget recommendation.
sure.
One of the challenges for those organizations, though, is it's difficult. I mean, I've worked with them for many years, is that they gear up and they get, and they hit the ground running in the spring, and they into baseball season, and it's getting them, and having Suzanne here on the rec committee means that it will carry over throughout the year. And you'll have somebody thinking about this and talking about it and pushing it in the off-season, because when the season ends, everybody goes,
yeah.
and we can't let that happen. And I'm hoping Suzanne will be able to keep us from having that happen. And then many of those same parents convert from baseball over to soccer, and they're in the soccer mode.
Right.
And, so having some
Just to give
consistency.
you a rough idea of how our organizations are run. The Little League organization it's 5 towns. It's Camden, Rockport, Hope, Appleton, and Lincolnville. And that's new as of 4 years ago. 3 years ago. That changed the way we used Mars Jones, and it changed the way the organization was run, in the sense that all of our games used to be at Marge Jones. All of our games, we had double games, we had concessions running, we had a certain amount of income from that. When we opened up to 5 towns, we changed our structure. Some of those games were moved to Hope, some of those games were moved to Lincolnville. Some of those concessions were kept in Hope and Lincolnville. Our concessions changed a little bit. Our income changed a little bit. But just to kind of support what Rick just said, we have roughly 65, in just Little League, there's roughly 65 coaches and 10 board members. And it takes about 5,000 volunteer hours to put on a season, and that is for just Little League. So Babe Ruth is a little different. It's much, much smaller. It's still 5 towns, but it's 2 teams. It's 6 coaches. We didn't actually have a board until about 3 weeks ago. So to expect, Little League has worked really, really hard, and like Jason said, they put $5,000 to $8,000 into the softball field to get it safe. Babe Ruth doesn't even have that kind of manpower or money. Babe Ruth charges $100 in registration fees per child, and that only covers insurance, balls, ump fees, and hats. They don't have a dime left over for a new uniform or a bat. So just keep that in mind when you're thinking about allocating the money and who, you've got one organization that is, I think, maybe burnt out in man time, and one organization that couldn't scrape together 10 more cents if they had to. And that's who's using these fields. And that's about 130 kids in these 2 organizations. And that's not including soccer. So really just the 2 baseball organizations. So just to give you an idea of what they look like, that's who is out there. And they are burnt out by the end of the season, and I think that is why maybe communications have faltered over the years. And I hope that we can get a new rec committee up and running and putting together policies and line items and, showing the select board exactly what needs to be done to move forward and keep these fields in tip-top shape.
I know one of the things that Owen and I had discussed is working with Babe Ruth, Pitch, the soccer program, and Little League to have a meeting before the season starts, February, March, as a rec committee group, the town, whoever needs to be involved, to sit down with these coaches and groups to say, this is what needs to happen during your season. You guys are responsible for X, Y, and Z. We're going to take care of this. So that way everybody knows what everybody's doing and everything's getting accomplished. To Phil's point, it's been 8 years. No one knew who was doing what. It got left. It's gotten to the point where literally the field is in deplorable conditions and not safe for the kids to play on. I think if we can get it back to where it needs to be, I'm not saying it needs to be Fenway Park, but if we can get it back to where it should be, we get these groups starting to work together and schedule annual meetings or quarterly meetings to make sure everybody's doing what they're supposed to. Get Rick Bresnahan and the Pitch on board, because they use those fields just as much in the fall. They need to be involved too. This is what you guys need to do to maintain the fields and make sure it's cleaned and so on and so forth. So
There are
that's
some
the biggest
active
thing.
parents in that community.
I'm sorry?
There are some active parents in that community that I think you can tap as well. You know them as well as I do.
Penn Bay, it's a huge group. I mean, there's 30 parents sitting on that sideline at any given time. I mean, it's a big organization, so.
Okay. Yep.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to make a motion to approve or to authorize the use of money from the Recreation Fields Reserve account in an amount not to exceed $15,000 to begin work on repairing the Little League and Babe Ruth League fields.
Second.
Moved and
And I
seconded.
chose that amount because the encumbrances we talked about seem to be in the 7 to 8 range, and it leaves us a little bit of wiggle room, and if I'm hearing correctly, it's about 20 that needs to be
Yes, sir.
done to get at least the minimal amount of work done. So I'm open to any further suggestions there.
This is a bunch of softies.
Successful.
Huh?
Discussion?
Oh, yeah, discussion.
This is saving
I'm-
Bob Hop.
I'm with you.
He's been the custodian since that park opened. He literally told me he was
Let them
going
say
to
yes.
leave.
Right, right.
Yep.
Yep.
So sad.
My only other question is, do we want to make any notation within the motion to take a look at putting that money back into the reserve fund in subsequent budgets to build it up?
I mean, that's
Yeah.
my intent, but I
Or-
don't think.
or do we just take a
I don't
note
think
of
we
it?
can bind that now.
Right.
What I've been hearing is, though, we need to put a lot more money
I understand.
into that, and that really, I think it may be something that we need to task the capital improvement committee. When they get up and running, there are a number, as we have found during our goals discussion, there are a number of things that we want to task that committee with.
Well-
That's my response, but now I'll turn
We
to
have the
you.
benefit of Jason being on the rec committee and understanding the difference between annual budgets and capital improvement items.
Well,
So-
Jason's.
He's not on the record.
Jason's
not on.
not.
Ah, you're not.
Not yet.
Well, you are.
Owen
I'm
is.
not.
You're not.
He's the
Well, I mean,
liaison.
you're a
He's the
liaison.
liaison.
We can count on you to.
She's
I'm
the
on
only
that
one
committee.
who's actually on the committee.
I volunteered to help. I don't want to be on the committee. I mean, I live in Lincolnville, but I'm willing to be on the committee so I can explain and work with them, the CIP.
It's
and-
important
Absolutely.
for, I mean, the average individual is not gonna have a nuanced understanding of
Absolutely
that,
understood.
and
Well, the thing is, as part of this process, we clearly need to have a strong recommendation from the Recreation Committee at budget time, not only for annual ongoing maintenance needs, what do those lines have to be? And also, what do we need to put, we need to replenish the reserve fund, and so I'm gonna be looking for a recommendation from the Recreation Committee for that. And also, if the tennis court number is $100,000, we need to have a schedule as to, okay, when are we gonna do that? And how much do we have to fund that reserve account so that when that time comes, we have the money to pay for it?
Yeah, because right now it appears that that fund has roughly 58,000 in it. We're authorizing taking 15 out, that brings it down to 43,000 and change. And we need to bring it up to probably in excess of 100,000. If right now the estimate's 100,000, it's gonna be more by the time we get to it in 5 years.
And I think the last thing I would say on this is, Rick and I have talked about this a little bit. We think that we're also maybe not cultivating some of the relationships that we should be with the other towns that utilize our resources or organizations. So as part of what the rec committee is going to be doing is exploring, who may be using the field a lot that wouldn't mind contributing, we just never asked them to. And the same with the tennis courts and some of the other things within that complex itself.
Yeah, I think it's worth exploring. You have to be a little careful because if Rockport kids are going to Hope, for example, to play on their field for a
We
little
talked
while,
about
there's a
that.
reciprocal
The
agreement,
tit
and it
for
doesn't make
tat,
any-
yep.
Doesn't make any sense just to move money around.
Yep.
But if there is a group that's coming in that are not Rockport residents that are using the field on a regular basis, then absolutely, we should look into that.
So I'm ready to vote.
I'm ready to vote.
All right,
Yeah, buddy.
the motion is on the floor for an amount of $15,000.
Not to exceed
Not to
15,000.
exceed. No further discussion, all in favor? That is unanimous.
Oh, thank you, gentlemen, very
Well, the
much.
biggest-
Thank you.
the
Now
biggest
make
thing
it
for this
good.
Is that we're now on track to.
Yes.
to manage this stuff going forward. That's the biggest outcome of
The
this.
biggest
in my
portion of our conversation is how much we need to do after this process is structuring the relationship between the towns and the league.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you for
coming
coming.
We now move back to discuss and vote to create a police training reserve. We have a memo from the town manager here to create it. We are receiving approximately 18,000 from the career development. I'm not sure exactly how we
Yeah,
put it, that, reimbursement for an officer that was taken before his time was up. And then we have some other money that is still sitting there loosely in a reserve that we need to consolidate into a specific reserve for police training. Rick?
Yeah, the challenge was to create a reserve that had a specific purpose, that utilizes the money that comes back to the town when a police officer is recruited from the town of Rockport before a 5-year period after he's left the academy. The other town, the receiving town has to pay us so much on a prorated basis for taking our officer before his time. So what happens to that money? It's been kind of sitting in a kind of an account for a couple of years. Some of it's been sitting there, and we have more money coming in. So the idea is to create this reserve, and also, as we get to the end of the year, we'll want to you'll get another request for encumbrances to make sure that we have enough money to train our officers and equip our officers in a way that we should be moving forward. So this is a pretty much straightforward, just create the account. The money's coming in, it's gonna sit there, but it really clarifies the purpose and creates an account.
Can I ask a question?
Right ahead.
Is this a normal thing for towns to have to do, or is this also an indication that we have a staff retention problem?
No, it's pretty normal. There's statute that requires this. There's state statute, because we did have that problem.
The best case scenario is that we keep the officers we train.
That we do.
right?
That is true. But they.
I mean, obviously, some amount of this must go on. I'm just wondering whether or
Well,
not.
the reality of the situation is that when an officer right out of the academy is hired or an officer hired in Rockport, we send them to the academy, we pay for the training, and then they come here, and then they work for a little while. And most of these guys are young, and they're looking for advancement.
Yeah.
So advancement for them
May
is gonna
happen
be,
here, may
is gonna
happen
be
elsewhere.
moving to a bigger department where there's more opportunities for advancement. We did have a retention problem a couple of years ago, and then we worked with the union to
Right, to get
increase the
pay increase up.
compensation a little bit, so it has improved since then. But you're asking the right question.
Right.
And, another issue that comes up is that some of the officers come in with goals in mind, and sometimes their goal is realized or can be realized. I think the last one wanted to go to the warden service.
No. I
Or
understand.
something like that.
I understand
But
professional
also,
development
yeah,
and moving
but
beyond
also,
here.
the issue is, we get a good officer, goes to the academy, other municipalities see that, and some of them, particularly the larger cities, have trouble recruiting, and so they'll go and try to hire the person away.
There are poachers out there.
There are poachers out there.
poachers.
There's so many different dynamics involved.
And it's worth it, in some cases, for some, we'll leave the cities' names out of it. But in some cases, it's cheaper for them to just pay us than it is to go out and recruit everybody. They've seen them, they've got people paying attention to the academy, and it's cheaper to just pay the town and recruit them away from us.
Yep.
But this just creates the account where it goes
understand.
and makes the purpose clear.
Owen?
Is the only money that's going to be put in there this money that we've been talking about, or will this
Yes.
be an additional? So that's
This is the money we're talking about. You'll get money for you'll get a request for the encumbrances also at next month's
and I
meeting.
suppose my question is, when we get to next year's budget cycle, will we be trying to put funds into this?
No, it does, this isn't a budget thing. This is when we get
Any
money
that
coming
comes
in.
from this
Well, but there's
mechanism.
nothing to preclude us in the future from saying we wanna add
Add-
some money.
And I
to
would
the
say, and I
reserve.
think you kind of touched on it, that's a good recruiting tool for us to poach good officers away from other places.
Yeah.
We have an account set aside for your education and your own advancement. So if you come to us and make a commitment to stay with us for 5 years or so, we'll help you get your next training. We'll help Dana get his next training. So it's a way of incentivizing the good officers we have and retaining them for additional opportunities, or trying to incentivize people to come here with additional training, potentially. So just, it's one of those things, I think it's a great line, I think it's a great way to consolidate the funds in there, and I just wanna make sure that it doesn't get left by the wayside. Training for me is training and education is a huge thing for me.
Do we have a motion?
I will move to create a Police Department Career Development Reserve Fund, G2-3611-00, for the purposes of training all officers, sending new officers to the Maine Criminal Justice Academy, providing equipment and uniforms to new officers, and paying overtime to cover shifts while officers are attending trainings, and fund it with $18,145.88, representing reimbursement from the state received in FY 15-16, and transfer $4,506.90 from the deferred revenue account, G1-1620-00, to the Police Department Career Development Reserve Fund, representing past training reimbursements for a total of $22,652.78.
Second?
Moved and seconded. Do we have further discussion? Owen?
I do, and I'm sorry I only picked up on this now. Why is equipment and uniforms in this line versus one of the other existing budget lines for uniforms?
Because if we have to hire, we lose an officer, we have to hire an officer, this allows us to spend the money that we get from the other town to
Okay,
outfit the officer.
that makes sense.
Only for new officers is the
Gotcha.
way I read it.
Right.
Okay. Thank you.
Further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor? That is unanimous. We now move to, and I gotta turn my page here, Discuss how we want to proceed, given the events of the June 30th Midco Solid Waste Board of Directors meeting regarding the post-2018 disposal of Rockport's municipal solid waste. I'd like to report at this time that Owen and I attended the the Municipal Review Committee's board meeting this morning up in Orono. They heard 3 requests. One from Blue Hill, Surrey, whose board is split 3-3. They are not organized like we are, where the town has to vote. They just have their board of their transfer station. And it has 3 members from each town, and they are split exactly 3-3. No proportional voting or anything. 2 from one town, 1 from the other. They were given an extension to the end of July. At that point, the question came up, what are the penalties if you want to come back into MRC after this current buy-in period? There would be a surcharge of $2.21 a ton on your disposal cost, and there would be no participation rebates. What they're proposing to do is those towns who are in dilemmas like Blue Hill, Surrey, and us, extending, it's not giving an extension, but just extending the period in which we can come up, and they will consider our request to be brought back and readmitted, as in their terms, to the MRC and be participants in all of the benefits. But they are looking at very firm deadlines. In the case of Blue Hill, Surrey, they made it July 30th.
They being MRC made it.
The MRC board took a vote, and they unanimously agreed to permit Blue Hill, Surrey to come in by the end of July, because the board, their people think that they can persuade 1 or more members to switch over at that point.
For clarification purposes, Blue Hill Surrey was formerly in MRC, so they're returning.
They have,
Potentially.
well, currently
Potentially.
they are technically MRC participants. They just haven't signed on to the new deal yet, which had a originally had like a May 31st deadline, then it was just pushed back to
Right.
June 30th.
Now, you may be getting to this point, but
Yep.
as an attorney's son, I have to ask, have we done anything in the last 6 months to remove ourselves from MRC?
Yes, we did.
So the vote, the
Because
initial
we did-
vote of the board of directors for the 4-town actively removed us from MRC.
Because we did not, we being the Midco Solid Waste Board,
Board.
did not put on the warrant to approve sending the trash to MRC/Fiberite.
Okay,
That effectively, because we didn't, well, if that, when the vote failed, if we had turned right around and a week later taken a vote to go,
right.
we would have still been within the permissible amount, because
Sure.
they had set the deadline at June 30th.
Yeah.
Because that June 30th date has passed, we are now out of the post-2018 MRC. We can apply for readmission. And what we then discussed with them, I made present, Owen chimed in, Allison, I can't remember her last name.
Keller.
Keller, was there. We were able to get from them, they took a vote to permit us to be readmitted if we take a positive vote no later than the end of August. But it has to be,
Town.
what?
The towns.
Each town needs to be.
We have until August 30th.
Technically, we could take our own vote. We'd have to call a special town meeting. You'd need 7 days' notice for that. We could take and say, we're sending Rockport's municipal solid waste to MRC. We would be bought in. However, if we want to remain part of Midco Solid Waste and the other 3 towns didn't vote, we're kind of out on a limb here. But MRC placed a number of statements. Before I get to that, Bucksport was the other town that was there requesting. That's because their board was split 3-3, but they have a 7-member board, and the 7th member has been out of the area and is due back in a week or so, and is sure to support it. So they also got an extension to the end of July. We got an extension to the end of August, but with very specific direction to us.
And it took
One-
some selling.
Yeah, well, one of which is, we need to start looking at this as the option. We can't be considering PERC, and we can't be considering another way to make EcoMaine viable or things like that. It's a drop dead date, absolutely nothing beyond that. And a couple of their people were very upset with some of the comments that had been made on that June 30th. The nitpicking, the questioning of certain people's financial motivations, whether or not money was there, things like that, that they're right on, that they could have their next meeting at the end of July based on what we meet and say about on July 27th when the next Midco Solid Waste Board meets, and they could withdraw this.
This is unilateral. The end of August is unilateral on their part.
We have to show that we are serious about sending our waste to MRC Fiberite. And we have to continue to show progress to it. The next Midco Solid Waste Board meeting is July 27th. That's the annual meeting, and that's when we're gonna continue our discussion. I told them we're looking at having another meeting. Actually, up there, I said August 11th, but it was August 10th. It's a Wednesday. And they are gonna be watching these. And, if they sense that the board is not behind this, they'll just pull the plug and say, oh, why do we even want to continue to work with you if you're not willing to work with us?
And you have to, when you go up to these meetings, you have to kind of feel a little bad for him. This nice lady's saying, for the last year, I've been taking beatings from towns, and we're kind of at the end of this process, and I'm done taking beatings from towns as we come and try to present what we think is the best option, and people just beating. She was saying, I'm done getting beat up.
Yeah.
Well, my reaction to this is, I feel like they're putting a gun to our head, and I don't like it.
And I actually would only say I didn't get that same exact feel, but I'll let you finish.
And because I think there are legitimate concerns. I came out of that last meeting, and I left early, but I did watch the rest of it on the live stream. And I come out of there with serious concerns about the Fiberite situation. I come out with serious concerns about EcoMaine too. Quite honestly, I'd like to look at PERC again. I'd like to look at PERC and the anaerobic digester up the road, and I just don't like somebody saying, you have to not consider anything else. I think it's in the best interest of the Midco Solid Waste Board to consider all options, to include MRC Fiberite. And if they say, well, you can't do that, then
We have been presented with the MRC Fiberite proposal for well over a year. And we went elsewhere. If we're gonna start back at square one and say, well, we wanna look at PERC, we wanna look at anaerobic digestion, we wanna look at EcoMaine, they will pull that right now. They will not go any further because, as Owen said, they're tired of being beaten up by certain members who want to nitpick at little issues that have nothing to do with the overall proposal.
Right. So I'm going to counter my colleague to my left, and we're all going to take a breath.
We're all to your left.
We're all- only visually.
Right, I was just thinking that.
I missed that part.
And we'll all take a breath here. So we're not guilty of some of the things we're thinking about other people. But for me, PERC is totally dead in the water. They offer us nothing in terms of science and nothing in terms of business acumen. And as I've been saying for a while, for me, Fiberite is the right thing to do. It is perfectly understandable that both sides of the issues have retained their human idiosyncrasies and have gone into places that they maybe shouldn't be going to, personal and that is, who knows what it is, but, and I can understand the folks from MRC and from Fiber Right saying, hey, we're just, we're getting tired. But I would like to pledge my vote, as it were, to Fiber Right, and because I think that they have the science, I think that they have, I'm not concerned about, I mean, we see the same thing on a local basis on this whole, you can't do a development until you show me you have, $850,000 in the bank for this. Those statements, those requirements are put in there to forestall, people who are just obviously gaming this situation. Fiber Right's not doing that. I think some of the things that some of the board members have done, supposedly on our behalf, are way beyond the pale in terms of being impolite and all this, what if so-and-so dies and that sort of thing. So I think I would like to see this board. Let me ask you a question. If this board, if you are looking tonight for a vote that says, how should this board represent Rockport going forward to the board of Midcoast Solid Waste, it would be nice, but is it imperative that this board be unanimous in going forward? Given the fact that everybody's tired, that MRC is saying you have to show definite progress towards it, is a 3-2 or a 4-1 vote enough to raise their ire? And I understand the whole idea of having a gun, feeling as though we have a gun put to our head. But you're right. It's been a year. Bad decisions were made for bad reasons, and people who are not willing to trust or trust in science or trust in people have made very conservative choices, let us say. Does this board need to wrangle this out for long enough to see whether we get a unanimous vote, or can a split vote still go forward and be helpful?
I think what would be helpful is that we have a positive vote, whether that be 4-1 or 3-2, but that we are committed to pursuing this process, and with the idea that we will, if the Midcoast Solid Waste Board presents a recommendation, that we will call a special town meeting to seek to approve the solution for MRC/Fiber Right. I think that would be an indication of positive support, that we are serious in this, that we're not just biding our time. If we're not unanimous, we weren't unanimous the last time we took this. But we have to be committed to following this through in an expeditious manner.
Right. So question number 2 is, we do our due diligence, we set a date, have a townwide thing. If all 4 towns are good enough, polite enough, process-oriented enough to do the same, but 3 towns go, if we see the same results as we saw at their annual town meetings, where does that leave the effort?
I don't know, because that was a question that I thought of while we were talking up there.
Is there any
There's-
reason to believe that isn't what's going to happen?
Very little reason to believe it. I think it depends on personalities and attendance.
And some things that other people have fed back to me since the June 30th meeting was that Lincolnville really didn't know what any option was. So they might change, the town
Right.
may change the vote. The select board probably won't. But that raises the question, what happens if one of the town refuses to schedule a special town meeting?
The
Again,
presumption being Lincolnville's select board knows how it feels about it. And
Well,
there's no reason to schedule a town meeting. Is that what you're?
well,
insinuating?
no. Oh, no. My recommendation is that each town schedule that meeting, special town meeting,
Right.
provided
we
Midcoast
all-
Solid Waste can come back with a recommendation.
But we all got a letter from Laidley Dunn that stated fairly clearly.
Fairly clearly.
That was dated before the
Yeah.
June 30th meeting, though,
Yes.
I think.
Yes, it was dated before, and he acknowledged in there that Camden Rockport didn't know what they were doing. We have the only solution. We hope you will support our solution. That was my reading of that letter.
Well,
Yeah.
I don't dispute it.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering whether or not there's any reason to believe that there's a likely change from.
I mean, I think, first of all, Mr. Chair, and
Yeah,
I don't think
go
we
ahead.
can take a vote tonight.
No. Well-
But I think, I mean, the way I got
We
it
we
was-
really can't. It wasn't on the.
No.
What I got out of the last meeting on the 30th of June was that the Midcoast Solid Waste Board was going to go out and solicit more information from MRC Fiber and perhaps others. And that they were then gonna have another discussion. So I think we need to wait for that information to come back, and to see what the Midcoast Solid Waste Board will then decide to do. They have to make a vote and a recommendation, I feel. And I at least want to hear what new information they're gonna get. There were questions about the financing, there were questions about the corporate structure. I want to hear the answers to all those questions, from their next reaching out and see, you know, they talked about having somebody other than Stuart Paul come to the meeting and
They are on
So-
schedule to have their technology
so
expert.
I want, before I am ready to say I'm on board with it, I want to hear that stuff, because I think those are legitimate questions that were brought up at that meeting, and I want to hear what they have to say, so. I'm not willing to commit to anything right now until I hear those answers.
What I would like to propose is that we think about this. Our next meeting is July 25th, 2 days before MRC, or Midco Solid Waste, is going to meet. But I would hope that we can take a vote to show a preference for solving this issue by the end of August. And strongly suggesting to Midco Solid Waste that they make a recommendation no later than August 10th as to what direction to go. Now, we would have to make our choice on August 8th to call a special town meeting.
I'm
There's
fine
a
with-
there's a timing issue
So the-
here,
the-
I know.
The one piece I just don't understand is that the information that you desire, do we expect that before our next meeting?
No,
It'll be at the next Midco Solid Waste meeting.
2 days.
2 days
I'm
after
our
our
I'm
meeting.
fine with committing to hold a special town meeting. I'm not gonna be ready to make a recommendation one way or the other
I
until
understand,
get
but
that
what I heard
information.
Bill just say was that he would hopes at our next meeting, we would be holding a vote at a time where we won't have the information that you just referred to.
What I was suggesting is that we have a vote to, such as the Lincolnville Board did, vote to recommend to, or endorse to Midco Solid Waste, that they actually take action so that we can have a town meeting before the end of August. You
And
know,
I'm
that's what I'm
I'm
thinking of here.
I'm fine with that. I'm fine with telling them, look, we want your recommendation. We will schedule a time. I'm fine with that. I just wouldn't be fine with making a recommendation about a certain provider or another at that point.
Yeah, go ahead,
I
Owen.
just wanted to, you had said, well, you know, what would make us think that one of the towns wouldn't reject it if our new recommendation was for Fiberite?
I only meant, has any information come in that makes us feel that people have changed their positions?
Yeah, and I would reference all the town meetings and the fact that against our recommendation, three of the four towns rejected what we asked them to do. So there's clearly a desire in three of the four towns' citizenry, not necessarily their select board, that we explore this further to the best of our abilities. Lincolnville's a completely different story, but as we've kind of come to understand, the processes that they went through up there were a little bit different, to the point of actually pulling aside one of their voting members and saying, this is how you're going to present yourself. You will approve this recommendation and you will support us, going against her desire to actually go with fiber. So not to put blame on Lincolnville, but I think that they did a pretty good job of presenting one side of a story with very little presenting of the other alternatives with it. So if the other alternatives were properly presented to them, I think that there is a high probability, if done properly, that all 4 towns could be unanimous.
I hear what you're saying. I would just offer that I think there is a difference between, I mean, you only have control over your own vote.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a difference between using the information that Ken referred to shape your vote and using how many people stand up in our town and cast their opinion one way or another to shape your vote. You can say, I'm going to go the way our town goes, or you can say, I'm going to make the decision process according to the information that I have and processing that information. I'm not going to try and influence anybody else on here, but I think it's dangerous for us to only follow the opinions of the majority of the people who happen to be in the room.
The room being the bigger vote, or the room
Town?
being the five voting members in this board?
The room being the.
You have to, like, if you already can say that you believe what happened the other day was a proxy for, which I don't believe that it was.
Which other?
Town meeting.
Town meeting.
Okay, thank you.
If you can say that you believe you know how the town feels about fiber right on the basis of that vote, which I don't feel that
Right.
I can say, then you don't need the information that Ken is waiting to hear, right?
Willing to make an additional decision without that information, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, which may or may not be a reasonable thing to do. But part of your question is, as individually, one of our questions to ourselves is, are we leading or are we following?
How do you make this decision?
Right.
Make it on the
Enough
basis
enough people have said that they need more information, both on the Midco Solid Waste Board.
I agree.
And at the town meetings, that they need more information.
No, that's-
You know, you could argue about Hope being one side and Lincolnville the other side, but the majority of the people that stood up over at Camden and here seem to indicate that they like the idea of fiber right, but they didn't have enough information, which is probably why they voted no on Eco Maine, because they had enough questions left as to why really didn't we consider this?
We have to keep in mind, they did not vote for fiber right. They voted not to support the
that is
recommendation.
exactly what I'm trying
Yeah.
to point out.
I think
It's
we're all in
very
agreement here.
dangerous to infer that we know what people actually did in that room, other than reject a very specific
Yeah.
stipulation.
For whatever reason.
For whatever reason, do not pretend that you know what those reasons are.
Yeah.
Yep.
I would like to pretend that I know what some of those reasons are.
Absolutely, I'm
Because
sure.
I've spent a lot of time talking with people and diving into this. So some of the reasons I do know,
And
because people have told them to me.
Okay, but the thing is, we need to move forward. We've got a limited opportunity to participate in the MRC fiber right option, but we, and when I say we here, we, the whole town, and really we, the whole Midco Solid Waste, need to make that decision by the end of August, or we are out.
And you're looking
And-
for an
yep.
expression of good faith. That
They are
that we
looking for expression of good faith.
engaging, and so, you know,
I mean, I'm willing to make the decision. I'm not gonna say what that decision is. If I get information back that I'm not gonna vote against my gut. If I get the information back and I say, you know what, I don't think it's gonna work, I'm not gonna vote for it. But I'm perfectly willing to say, okay, let's gather the information as the Midco Solid Waste Board is gonna do, and then we'll make.
so
have
can
another
I
decision.
tease that? Can I tease that out? And I'm not trying. I don't have my own opinion about this, but one of the things that troubled me in this discussion so far is that I don't feel that there's been a very frank conversation about what happens if we aspire to fiber right and it fails. Right? I mean, let's say we could get to a consensus that that is our aspirational goal for fiber right to succeed. Do you guys have a clear understanding of what happens if they are, for whatever reason, unable to achieve that facility?
Yeah.
Oh,
The question-
a year and a half down the road, you're saying?
You-
Yeah.
Your question is.
I know what I've heard,
It's a
but-
total and abject failure, they
No, I
can't
don't know.
process
I mean-
anything?
I don't know what I mean.
I feel like we can answer that because that is all that we got hit with was what the worst case scenario. So I feel like I'm in a really good place to explain what I believe it would look
Okay,
like.
so I really am asking.
So no,
What is it-
yeah, no, and it's one of those things that we talked about a lot. So we would go up there. We continue to burn our stuff with PERC. They're trying to build their facility.
Yep.
We've heard 2017. I don't think
It's a
that's
delay,
realistic.
whatever.
2017 is off.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
And the
2018.
front of it's online.
We
before
switched the
rest.
contracts with PERC. Immediately, our stuff gets cycled to them. All of a sudden, they're not able to take our trash in the front end or in the back end. The front end is the sorting end. The back end is the anaerobic digestion.
I understand the mode of failure. So what
Yep.
happens now?
So what happens then is it goes to Crossroads landfill,
Yep.
where it gets landfilled until we have figured out the process. Try as I might to try to see if we could, like, burn it at PERC temporarily. See if there's a way that's more environmentally sound than landfilling. It doesn't seem as though there's wiggle room within the contract to try to be clever like that. So their backup is actually, and it sucks that it works this way, but it's actually more economically. It's financially
Yeah.
better for our town to have it be landfilled. That is not what we would like, but yes, it would be a temporary landfill until they've gotten up and running to be able to do it. Once they have gone past a certain threshold, and we have a 20-year contract with them, and they've shown systematically up to 3 years or so that they're not able to take inability to take it. It's all been going to landfill. There are mechanisms within the MRC to where we can step away and wash our hands of it and then go up to EcoMaine and say, hey, you guys are looking pretty great right now.
Now,
Can
I
I
would
just ask,
add
is
to
that everyone-
that,
okay.
I would add to that, though, that the majority of the waste that is right now been pledged to take to the MRC facility comes from up there. They have no other option except PERC, if
No, I
PERC is still
understand.
running,
Yep.
to do anything. So something is gonna be created up there. Maybe it's PERC lit off again and burning, it goes back into burning.
What you're saying is a failure of fiber.
If it is a total and complete
There will
utter
be another
disaster,
alternative because something
something
has
has
to
to
be done.
come up because there's not gonna be enough landfill capacity up there to handle all of northern Maine. So something's gonna happen. And it's gonna have to happen pretty quick. But we should know, because the deadlines that they have now started to set up is they've got permitting approved. The comment period from DEP has closed. The permitting, they are, I think Thursday or Friday, DEP will answer their
shaking his
final.
The public comment
Yeah.
is, period is closed.
Right.
But now it's all the other,
Yep.
The appeals.
the appeals and interested parties, and those letters are coming in. A delay of months could scrap the whole project.
And we will know that by the end of the week.
And the
Because
scrapping-
that's when DEP has to issue their final approval. If they don't, because they got appeals, that tells us one thing.
Then there's legal appeals that will come in. You know, PERC will probably appeal, and that'll get tied up in the court system. You know, who knows how long that could take.
And I would just, I hope that if they're not even able to produce or start even building it because of some of these hang-ups and bang-ups that Rick's talking about, that we'll know that far in advance of our, was it March 2018, when our contract with PERC is completely terminated. So if we decide to go with Fiberite, we'll continue to follow the process as strict observers and try to figure out how they're going along. And if we get on to early 2018 and they haven't put a shovel in the ground, we have other options.
There's the issue here, that if the appeals do kick in, we will know that. You know, again, somebody can run in and file a lawsuit in federal court March 30th, 2018, and stop it all. You know, it's what are the courts gonna do that we can't foresee. If the courts come in and do something like that, other alternatives kick in, which is probably a very good question to ask on the 27th. what happens if PERC comes in and gets an injunction from a federal court?
I do have to say that the gun that's being held to our metaphoric head by MRC pales in comparison to both the letter we got from Lincolnville and the whole, all these big PERC and other people coming in and throwing wrenches in the cogs on a legal basis to keep the new guy out. That sense of jeopardy.
I'm sorry, I don't follow what you're saying. Are
The
you talking about a likelihood of it?
sort of Damocles hanging over our head of legal action with the DEP and with and this whole idea of combined with 1 out of 4 towns saying we're so convinced that everybody should respect our convincement, which is not a word, but
You're right, it's not.
Convincement?
Jeff gets this
Convincement.
way. Okay.
yeah.
Can I say
I'd like to-
one final thing? I'm actually a lot closer to you than you may think. I'm very much pushing to get as much information as we can about Fiber Right. If at the end of this process it turns out that I was taking a fool for some snake oil, like a lot of people have been saying, I'll be the first person to go back to EcoMaine, and I'm fine with that. But I think that there's such an opportunity here that we really do have to set ourselves in that course and in that direction and vet it to the, kind of put blinders on. And if at the end of it we go, shoot, I don't think it's going to work.
Well, we need the information, and
Yep.
that's what
How
I
is
think
that
came out of
information
last
going to be
week.
communicated to the town of Rockport beyond the select board?
It's coming to July 27th meeting of Midco Solid Waste Board over, it's gonna have to be at the town office, unfortunately.
What is it? No. Update,
talking about
flash,
bigger,
flash.
broader.
Have to go.
What?
Update, there is no conflict in this room
On the
on the
27th?
27th.
What happened to the board?
As of this morning,
Board of Planning
Jamie will
Board?
nod his head and say, planning board's not meeting.
Oh. Oh, okay.
So, Mr.
Okay.
Vice Chairman could you let your committee know that?
Thank you.
Because that's going to be critical, I think, for information purposes,
Mm-hmm.
disseminating information.
Okay.
Are you talking bigger and broader?
I
Like
really
after
was
we've made our
talking bigger
decision,
and-
how do we get the information that we all have tucked in our heads that's extremely difficult to explain? How do we get that to our citizens?
That is what I was asking.
Yeah, that's a tough one. We have compressed our time frame to an unwieldy and unreasonable thing for us to think that that's something we could actually accomplish.
We're gonna be faced with calling a special town meeting sometime in the second half of August when the attendance is gonna be crappy. And if that's gonna be at that special town meeting, when we have to talk to the people who are in the room and let them know how we feel about it.
Yeah.
And, whether we're a united board or not, we're each gonna have to say our piece, I think. Or at least answer questions from those who attend.
We could do some things where we really try to cultivate some good relationships with the media to push these stories specifically to try to get the information out. Basically, if you're reading all the different stories that are in all the different media outlets, you can get a good understanding of it, but not everyone does. So maybe trying to figure out how we can do a public
Bangor Daily
plea.
has had a lot of stories on it
Andy
recently.
O'Brien's been doing it in the Free Press. Village Soup's been covering it a bit.
I'm not looking to shy away from our responsibility to make decisions. My sense is that we, have been bearing the brunt of falling short on communicating with our voters. And is there anything we can do to? But I hear what you're saying. That's the time where we can.
The time is so short, we don't really have time for a lot of public information meetings. I mean, I think we're gonna have to trust our citizens, quite honestly. And we're gonna have to trust the Midco Solid, I have to trust the Midco Solid Waste Board to re-examine everything, as I mentioned at the last meeting, and to have an open mind. And then I have to listen, personally, I have to listen very carefully to what they have to say and alleviate my concerns with the options that we have.
Between here and the 30th, I'm almost concerned of our ability to disseminate the information to the freaking Midco Solid Waste Board and the different select boards, let alone the citizenry. Because we play this ridiculous game of phone tag where we ask a question and we don't get answers. So one of the big things we're trying to do is we're getting off tangent, my bad.
Yeah, we're wandering down. I wanted just to bring you up to date on what went on today and let you know we've got an option, but the time is closing. Now, let's move on to appointment of the town attorney. As Rick said in his notes for the meeting here, Ken, Carrie, Jamie, Rick, myself have been meeting. We interviewed a number of potential attorneys. And actually, after the two, we said, boy, the next one's really gonna have to blow us away to be able to do it, and they came in and they just blew us away. And, you know, we then had follow-up conversations with them. This is Bernstein Shore, and we'd like to recommend that they be our next town attorney. They presented us with a letter in the packet, detailing the contract that we will be, actually, this is the contract, and how we are going to work on this. Basically, it's a fixed rate contract. It is not an hourly contract, except for things over and above what the scope of work is detailed. And that would be, you know, the biggie, you know, that some lawsuit or something that we haven't anticipated.
There was also a tax increment financing portion in there that is not covered, correct?
And we were just
That is
about to
correct. I think
reassess our
that is
TIF.
correct, right, Rick?
Yeah,
Yeah.
typically that is, that's a separate item.
Yeah.
That would be setting up a new TIF or
That,
something.
yes, and
like
that would be
Right.
for the new TIF.
If we decided to do that, I
It's
think,
like bond counsel, it's a whole separate,
I only asked because we discussed, you know,
But I
making
think
that a
if-
priority, but.
if they, if we ask them to give us advice on our current
Current.
TIF situations, I
Yeah.
think
Yeah,
that would be
that's a-
included in the scope of
right, it's
services.
setting up
It
a
would only
new-
be that if we had to set up a new one, because that's a lot of extra work.
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
And this is kind of an interesting process, this fixed fee thing, because it's the first time they've ever done it. They've never done it with any other town. And in the past, all our town attorneys, it's been an hourly rate. You call them up and they set the clock running, and then when you're done, you fix it. And then you get billed for it. The attraction of this is a couple of attractions for me. One is it's a fixed cost. We know what the cost is gonna be, and that over the years, if you've been involved in the budgets, is, you know, we've had, the legal fees are all over the place. They took our last 3 years average, they looked at the budget, they did their homework before they came in, they knew what we spent. And so they came up with this number, and it's a fixed rate fee. We got them to agree that, to hold that rate for 2 years, and then, but to re-examine along the way and make sure that it's working for both of us, things like that. One of the other positive things about it is that our staff now, including Jamie and Kerry and Rick, who are most of the users of the attorneys, will feel more free to call the attorneys earlier in the process.
Right.
And that's, for them, that's an attraction too, because then they will be kept up to date about what things are going on. They may be able to put out little fires before they become big fires. And so it's a unique arrangement. I think it has the potential to be a really good arrangement. I'm very impressed with Mr. Saucier, who came up here a couple of times. Came up here one time when his wife was doing something at the Samoset with his kids, and came in and sat with us with a, you know, short sleeve shirt on, and to talk about things, and very nice guy. And the other thing that was really impressive for them was the depth of talent they have within the firm. They gave us several examples of some really odd situations that came in from their other clients where they were able to say, oh, let me check with so-and-so across the hall. Oh, okay, I got an answer to that, where another firm might have had to subcontract that out and cost how many hours of legal services and just run the bill up. So I've said my piece, I guess.
Yeah. Owen, you looked like you had a question?
I was only smiling because following the Fiberite conversation, again, we're being proposed something new that's never been done before. I feel like I'm being sold snake oil. No, I think it's great. I think it's awesome. It's just never been done before. Sorry, I just
But it's
put
an
a massive...
established
Yeah.
Touche, sir, touche.
Well, I'll move to appoint Philip Saucier of Bernstein, Schurer, Sawyer, and Nelson, PA, as the lead attorney and legal firm for the town of Rockport with an annual contract price of $36,000.
second.
Moved and seconded. I would point out that the letter to be signed has Rick's signature on there. we are actually the ones who are hiring. So effectively, we will be authorizing
me
Rick
to
to
sign.
sign the letter.
So moved.
No, just wanted to point that out. Further discussion? All in favor? Very good. Thank you.
Can I take a bathroom break, or are we gonna just power through?
Take a break.
Take a
Let's
5-minute
let's
break.
take a 5-minute break.
Stand up anyway.
I'll talk to him later.
Well, this is, okay, we'll have that later. Okay, our next one is to discuss whether or not to repair the ability to.
I don't want to.
To present this on TV,
Yeah.
Channel 22.
So let's make this real quick.
Yep.
Owen's wife wants to have it on, so I'll do it. I don't get, as everyone knows, I volunteer my time towards the setup and everything, and I just came sort of to the end of my allocated 100 hours.
Only
for-
100?
To set this up? No, about probably about 125
Yeah,
for
right.
me. But there are some pieces that need to be nudged into place and what have you. So we can go back to doing Channel 22.
Do we have any idea about the participation on the viewership side?
We don't. We don't.
Plus my kids.
Right. So there's a possibility of 3 or 4. I mean, there have been people who have come to board members and said, I don't own a computer. I want to be able to watch it. The one thing that we want to be really, really clear about is that now that we have this, magical ability for someone to go back and watch it, we do not have that, and that will not happen on television. The only time you'll be able to see it on television is live, and that's important for me to express.
No DVDs.
There's no DVD. We won't even be. It used to be that we archived them as DVDs, and you could go to.
So is this instead of a web stream?
No.
In
This
addition
is
to.
it's totally on top of it. And
We're just trying to describe what its limitations are.
when I ask myself, is it worth the 3 or 4 hours it's going to take me to get it back running again? I ask myself the exact same question you did: is who's watching it? How many people are watching it? And it turns out that Owen's wife is watching it. So.
She sends me text messages. Man, it's bad. So 2 things. One was, this probably is not the appropriate time to talk about it, but I'd again like to revisit what it would look like to have scrolling informational highlights, if you will, on that television program.
You just
I'm sorry.
created 2 different things.
That's
here.
not here. That's Stacy in the office.
Right. And so this isn't, I guess, the conversation to have it in, but utilizing, if we're going to have the channel and we're going to have information on there and it's our town channel, I'd like to see how complicated it would be to have a scrolling calendar or, for the public information stuff. You can click onto Channel 22, and if you watch it for 5 minutes, you'll be able to see the calendar. You don't have to do anything. I can do it while I'm having my kids. I think it would be nice, but I don't know the nuances of it. So we can have that conversation later on.
Right. The question is going to become, and we can ask the question now.
Date it.
Well, is it worth? There's as much energy to update the television, which we know under 6 people are watching, than it is to update the calendar, which is a whole nother workflow. And quite honestly, and this is the conclusion that I came to until pushed by this agenda item. Quite honestly, at some point we're not going to have a TV presence. Is it this year or is it 10 years down
You
the road?
just said under 6 people. Was that just a figurative number, or you know that to be true?
That's a figurative number, but
Listening tour.
it's it hovers around that.
Okay, then I'm the weirdo that literally clicks onto Channel 22 when there's nothing else on and speaks.
Now, Brendan, to be totally truthful, prior to streaming, we had 15 people watch a meeting, and that's all they could do is watch while the meeting was being held. But 8, 9, 10 people per meeting would watch. But that was when there was no option at all.
Yeah,
See how many
yeah.
we got here now.
So,
Typical crowd.
well, some of that has to do with the fact that we've been here for.
Yep.
this is reasonably easy to do. The scrolling on Channel 22, personally, I would say it's not worth staff time.
Okay, let's have that discussion at another point, but
Is there a cost to repairing the ability and money other than your time?
I think we have all the pieces.
We don't need to buy new equipment.
No.
okay, Owen.
If there is, I'll gladly let you know.
Yeah,
I'll
please.
say one last thing. I did take the opportunity to catch the ear of the chairman of this select board to try to tease out some ideas on how we could properly compensate you for your time. We couldn't come up with anything clever. I think that I know, and you shrug, but the sheer volume of time.
Hang on a minute, though. If there's 2 people watching it, we should not be compensating him for his time. We shouldn't be doing it.
Okay, so what Jeff was talking about, those hundreds of hours, is
Yeah, we'll have this conversation another time.
okay.
We are very appreciative of the time that Jeff puts in on upgrading our technology here and servicing the equipment, moving it upstairs and downstairs. I think we're all in agreement on
there's no
that.
question about that.
You know, and he does tremendous work, and he
It was
feels that it's a conflict of interest to ask for reimbursement.
It was tongue in cheek, right? If there were 300 people watching this, you'd
No.
be fired up to do it.
No.
No,
300 people watching,
If there were 300, I mean,
watching TV?
watching us on Channel 22 in this room. I mean, what we're looking at here is,
Well, right now, nobody is because we're not able to broadcast from here.
Yeah, and I'm not even sure how we get the word out, but
And Brendan, this was
I'm doing it
only
as a favor.
one example that we're talking about right now in which Jeff devotes hours of
no, I
his
get
we're
that.
talking
Okay,
about 2 different things.
Yeah,
I move to approve the repair of the ability to broadcast
Thank
meetings in
you.
the Upper House Meeting Room on Channel 22, the town cable television station.
Approve.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion, hearing none, all in favor?
I'm gonna
Okay.
abstain.
I'm going to abstain. I don't feel like I
But-
have the relevant information.
Yeah, you-
Don't have the relevant information?
yeah,
Why would we do this if we don't have any idea who's watching? Or who
It's
would
an,
watch?
it's an avenue of information for some citizens who may not have any other.
And as a person who has
That's what it
spent
is for
a
me.
lot of time talking about citizen engagement and outreach, we have a television channel that people watch.
Because some
So
people,
what I really just asked was, do people watch it?
Yes.
the answer is yes. to
Yes.
that. How many, we don't know.
Yeah.
But the question, I mean, that begs the question, if it's 2 people watching it, then those 2 people are getting information from us that they may not be able to get any other way. They may not have a fast enough internet connection to stream. They may not have the computer to do it. So it's just a matter of, you know, if we vote not to do this, then we're saying to some people, well, we don't want you to watch our meetings.
We're disenfranchising
Some people.
some amount of
We
people.
don't know how many,
And-
but to disenfranchise any, if there's no cost to it. If there was a large dollar amount,
All
I'd have a
right,
different
all right,
opinion.
you've convinced me.
Okay. Okay, I'm gonna call for the vote again. All in favor?
I'll vote to
Yeah, there we go.
cheerfully.
All right, good. Next item is reviewing
you're
the
gonna end up
dates
doing
and
it.
milestones leading up to the November election. I put this in here because we will be hearing next Monday from the Ad hoc Library Planning Committee. And if
I
we want,
apologize, I'm not going to be here for you, even though I am the liaison.
that's okay.
No, I
We'll
may
give you a
be-
day
I
off.
may be, I may not.
Yeah, you may or may not. They will make the initial presentation of where they stand. At that time, we will ask questions of them. And then they will then go and turn around and on Wednesday, make the public forum meeting upstairs and then come back to us on August 8th. In fact, we're devoting almost that entire meeting to the Ad hoc Library Planning Committee on the 8th. And then our regular business would be on the
Later.
22nd, if I got my numbers right. But what this here is what the schedule is and how we get to the November 8 meeting. There are specific dates that have to be met. Like on August 8th, we have to have a vote for a public hearing on September 8th. Thursday, August 11th, the published notice has to be that the ORC will have items out and, you know, and so on forward. And I just want to make sure we were all aware of the deadlines, because if we want to have an article questioning about a bond issue for a new library, we need to take action in a very timely manner.
Well,
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, for me, what the big issue is the fact that August 8th, we get the final, is that the right one? Yeah, the final presentation
Yep.
is August 8th. we have to vote September 8th. So we only get 1 month to consider this and to gather public input or whatever to help make our final decision.
Mm-hmm.
So I just put that out there as a comment.
Jeff?
Personally, I think we could spend time at this meeting going over these dates and what have you, but I think so much is involved in the dynamics of how it's presented, what the reaction is, whether we are well advised to not push it for this fall.
Yeah.
That I don't think it's,
You don't have the information.
well, yeah, I think it's a waste of time to talk about the guidelines now because they're not going to change, you know, and it's fairly pro forma. The real question is, do we have it this fall or next spring? So.
And the only, I had a comment, when I was looking over this and I saw absentee ballots on October 7th and then 2 informational meetings, October 7th, tentatively, it only reminded me of the library vote that we had. Do you remember how absentee ballots were taken out? Some people had taken those out and voted, and then we had certain informational meetings where we released engineering studies, and there was some complaining. Maybe it wasn't the engineering studies, but we had informational meetings, and people were complaining, saying, I didn't have all the relevant information when I took out my absentee ballot. So I'm just curious.
There's also one the week.
Yeah,
There's
for
also
sure.
one the week of October 3rd to 7th.
Another one August 29th. And the only thing, the question that I had was, do we anticipate substantial information or things changing during those final 2 informational meetings that might cause someone who voted during the absentee period to want to change their? Just because it came up last time, I figured I would present it.
My opinion is that there wouldn't be new information because the question has to be stated and placed on the ballot so that it is available on October 7th. That means it has to go to the printer a certain period of time before. We start changing the information, then why holding a vote?
Well, it's not so much changing the information, but I think at these meetings, I mean, there'll be public meetings and things could be presented a little bit differently, or there could be a different question from the audience. I think it's people who vote absentee that early vote at their own risk, in my opinion.
Okay, there you go. That's a good explanation.
I mean, it's, because they could hear something and they could change their mind, but if they're, and then it's too late
Yeah.
for them,
That works for me.
one way or the other.
You
I
know,
just figured I'd bring it up.
yeah, and this is only on the assumption that we will want to put something out at the November, on that November ballot. We don't have to.
To
You
the
know,
best of this board's knowledge right now, it is the goal and the desire of the ad hoc library committee to have something on the ballot in September.
That was the direction we
Sorry,
gave
in,
them.
November?
We gave them the charge to be prepared to present a final plan in August so that we can put something on the ballot in November. It's not their choice, it's our choice.
No, I
Yeah.
understand that, but.
And that's the goal that they are working to.
But they haven't asked for more time, they haven't,
No.
okay.
No.
They've been very good about doing what we have asked them to do all
Yeah.
along. But I think Jeff is absolutely right. It's up to us to really take the temperature of the crowds at the public meetings here coming up.
And we will discuss this more with the ad hoc library planning committee next Monday. You won't be there.
apologize, I won't be
Yeah. And then again on the 8th. And we don't need to make final decisions
Yeah.
until then.
Brendan, will you be able to Skype, did your schedule allow you to Skype into, watch it live? The reason I ask is that you would have an opportunity to post questions on our
I probably can do that.
two-way thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I've set that.
I'm not gonna promise that, but
No, I got you.
I don't actually know what the infrastructure is
And-
like where I'm staying.
Okay, and I have set set it up as a meeting in case we need to make decisions. You wouldn't be able to vote even if you were Skyping in, so. Okay. The Ad hoc Library Technology Committee has asked to sit down. What did I
You
say?
said ad hoc library technology.
Which, there may be such a thing.
Ad
but
hoc
it's not-
Technology
Next
Committee.
month.
Ad hoc Technology Committee has asked to sit down and speak with us, and I am suggesting that we do it Thursday, August 11th. And the question is, last year, we were holding some of these workshops at 4 in the afternoon. do we want to even consider continuing to do that? We are more alert at that time, but there's the question of can the majority of the members get here at
Four to
that time?
11 meeting?
Well, let me ask another question on it, is that, do we want to, if we're gonna do a listening tour, one of the things that we're gonna talk about in the listening tour, I assume, is the future of high-speed internet in town. We're gonna try
Yeah,
to
that's
gauge
what
the
we said.
temperature of the town on that. Do we wanna wait to talk to them until we've had that discussion?
No, we want to frame the discussion with input from the technology committee. Well, we at least want to go into it with the benefit of what that committee has learned and their approach. And also, one of the things they'll ask us is permission to look at alternate funding so that we can go ahead with no cost to the town. So it's a timely meeting. We're not wasting our time with the technology committee, and it will help inform crafting good questions for the listening tour.
'Cause I-
Okay. So I've already heard that 4 o'clock is not a desired time.
Okay with me, actually.
The 11th is not, it's not like I'm absolutely necessary. The 11th, I'm out of town at the Maine Town and City Managers Conference.
Oh, would you send me those dates?
Probably not, but those are the,
Probably not gonna send them to me. If you would. Thank you very much.
I don't think so, actually.
I tell you,
yeah, that's the
Keep
date.
you on your
where's
toes.
where's Rodney Dangerfield when I need him?
So we're gonna have a meeting. No, you're not. Yeah, that was.
Okay.
Nice.
Do we want to go at 4 then?
I'm fine with it.
I'm fine with 4.
Jeff
It's okay
can.
with me. That works better for me, actually.
Okay, we'll do it at 4.
I can't say
Is
4.
was that a proposed time by the
The 11th at
technology
4
committee?
p.m.
Or are we just forcing them into that?
They wanted to meet with us.
No, I just
Oh,
wasn't.
I did not ask
They
them.
generally do their meetings in the late afternoon anyway. Haven't they been?
No, we've been going at some ridiculous 10 o'clock in the morning now,
Oh.
out by 12 or something. Anyway, so we'll make it work. We'll make it work
Okay.
with them.
August 11th, 4 p.m.
Yep. But we won't have Rick.
He just won't be there.
Okay. The next one here is vote to direct the Conservation Commission to serve as the town's pesticide advisory board. I think I got the name right this time.
I think so.
So,
Or it's either Pest Management Advisory Board or Pesticide Advisory Board.
Pesticide Advisory Board.
Okay.
oh, that makes more sense.
It does. Because I don't want them to tell me I have to leave. Oh.
Okay.
So, does any, sorry, I am actually the liaison now, but does the committee that I am liaising to, know that we're adding this responsibility?
I have mentioned it to them,
And
and they
no-
have an interest in it. It probably doesn't mean anything, quite honestly, because the town adopted a pesticide management policy here, what about, I don't know, 6 or 7 years ago.
7, 8 years ago.
And as part of that policy, there was supposed to be established a pesticide advisory board. To my knowledge, it was never established.
Got it.
And so there has been no need for it over those 6 or 7 years. And when I was reading the policy, because of the Conservation Commission's forum last year on pesticides and lawns, somebody asked if we had a policy. I looked it up, said, oh yeah, we don't have this board. They have an interest in pesticide, judicious application and correct application of pesticides. So it makes all the sense in the world to give them this responsibility, knowing that we're probably not giving them anything extra that they're gonna have to do anyway.
Just a quick one on second and third level repercussions. Will, like, say, Goose River Golf Course, will they fall under the control of this and the things that they put down on their facility?
This is town use.
Town use only?
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
so.
that was what the ordinance was the town's use and advising people, like, they had that presentation about lawn maintenance.
Yep.
It's though, it's not mandatory for the citizens, but it is for the town, which is part of the reason why the fields out there,
Yep.
Mars Jones are as they are. So, do we have a motion?
Finding the motion here.
Right here.
I'll move to direct the Conservation Commission to serve as the town's pesticide advisory board,
Pesticides management,
not the pest management advisory
pesticides
board.
management advisory board.
Pesticide management advisory board.
Okay. We had a second?
I second it.
Okay. Further discussion? All in favor? Thank you very much.
That allows us to actually conform to the ordinance
Yeah.
that we adopted 7 years ago.
Yep. The next item, the last item under new business is to vote to elect 2 representatives to the Senate District 22, from Senate District 22 to serve on the Maine Municipal Association's Legislative Policy Committee for a 2-year term. We have 2 nominees who are seeking our vote, me being one and Jay Filer of Union being the other.
I move to elect William Chapman and Jay Filer from Senate District 22 to serve on the Maine Municipal Association Legislative Policy Committee for a 2-year term.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion? All,
My friend blew up Jay's mailbox when we were in high school. He called the police on us.
you hold no grudge.
No, he seems like a great guy. He called the police.
Okay. All in favor?
He didn't shoot you.
He didn't. He followed us.
Okay. Rick, would you, oh, we got it in here. We'll get it signed tonight. Okay. That completes the new business portion.
Move to leave as select board, enter as wastewater commissioners.
Second.
Moved and seconded. We have to approve the commitment of the sewer user rates.
We gotta vote on the motion.
Oh, I'm trying to move this right along. All in favor? We're wastewater. Now we have the motion.
Move to commit the May 2016 wastewater user debt fees totaling $23,172.07 to the treasurer for collection.
Second.
Moved and seconded. And I'm just double checking the numbers and they're all good. Discussion? All in favor? That is done.
Move to exit as wastewater commissioners, return as select board.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor? We can now move to liaison reports. I'd remind you that we want to discuss the liaison. This is a time for voting on or bringing up issues that we have questions about that need to be really on the next agenda. If you got something like that, let me know and I can put it on the next agenda. Made no
Okay.
sense, right?
Made no sense.
Okay. We don't need to get in long, involved discussions. These are us to present the liaison reports. I also want to remind us all that we need to start thinking, if we want to have a bond issue, how much we think that the town should be paying on a bond issue for the new library if we decided to create a bond in November. So start thinking about it because we will have to vote on.
Is that what this is for?
That's what that is. That's why I passed that out. That's the schedule of what the payments would be, how much, what the impact would be on a $360,000 home, which is the average median price of a home now.
So,
That figure changed from 280.
Yes, it did, yeah, yep. Guess with the revale or something.
So is that the
I think it's a median.
That's,
Half the houses are above it and half are
Yeah.
below.
right. No, I thought that was the average value. Sum it all up
I
and
don't know
divide
what.
by the number of houses.
Actually, I'm not sure what
I think 360 is average. I think
Yes.
287 is median.
median, okay.
That
Okay.
makes sense.
Yeah, because we have a couple up very
Yeah.
high end, yeah.
Yeah,
So we do, just for the sake of the differences between average and median, you can figure out, we can give you both and you can decide. But really, the mill rate adjustment, the increase in the mill rate is what you're thinking about. And I had her break it down for a bond amount of $1 million, $1.2 million, $1.5 million, $1.7 million, $2 and $2.5 million, just so you can see.
okay. Moving ahead, we have the Recreation Committee scheduled to present to us on August 22nd. Do we want to have that?
Say we
Since
kinda
they
had 'em
were just
tonight.
here tonight?
I'm sorry, could you say that again?
The Recreation Committee is scheduled to come before us with their annual presentation on August 22nd. Given what we had tonight,
I guess I would ask the liaison. Do they?
You know, I would actually say if there's a spot in September, that would put us after all the league seasons, that would put the rec committee in a little better spot to give you a presentation. And also, whatever activities have taken place with these monies that we just approved, they'd be able to give you great updates on. So if we wanted to do it in September, that would be fine.
right now, September, we have the cemetery committee and the harbor committee.
Okay.
Are
Are those both on the same day?
Oh, wait, you're on the harbor committee.
I'm on the
now.
harbor committee now.
Were those on two separate meetings, or were they both on the same day?
Both on the same
Okay.
day,
No good deed goes unpunished.
yeah.
I'm okay with it.
We could move it back to October.
That's fine.
There's nothing on for October.
Perfect.
Okay.
Yeah, it makes sense for them, and then they can get keyed into
Closer to
Give
budget.
an
budget.
update about
Yeah.
what's going on. Yep.
Okay.
You now have a complete committee now.
The only thing we got to do is election of officers, and we finally have someone who's willing
Okay.
to be chair. Very excited.
You can talk about that in a minute.
Yes,
Library committee has decided that they are going to be meeting at 3 PM on the third Monday of each month, with the exception of those months that it's a holiday on that day, which they pushed back then a fourth week.
Did they determine that they didn't need a fifth member until the fall?
They were agreement with that,
I
that
assumed that since we had.
they
that.
have not had any real issues. They don't have a lot of decisions that they have to make where it requires a vote. Most of it is just ongoing asking and thinking about proposing something to come up. The big thing they have to vote on is their warrants. And 3-1 or 4-0 is usually the procedure. They've operated for the last almost a year without a fifth member, so,
In attendance?
in attendance.
There were 5 people on the committee,
Yeah.
but I think, what's her name, Michelle?
Yeah, Michelle Gabrielson was out of country most of the time with personal issues, so they were operating shorthanded. And they were operating shorthanded when Barry Preble resigned before Stephanie was elected. So they're good,
And
they're
that
good
was
for that.
that was agreed upon by the whole committee. None of them felt it was necessary.
We had discussed it, and they were willing to go either way.
They didn't take a vote, they didn't have enough members.
No, they had enough members. They just didn't, they said, it's the select board's choice, because that's what it says in the town charter.
Right.
So, we chose not to appoint, which was our prerogative.
I thought that our prerogative was to wait for input back from the library committee and then make another decision.
And we got it. I asked.
So
I'm
we
sorry,
don't-
what are we missing here?
Well, you just said
Owen's
that they
wondering
could,
whether you asked with a choice or not, I think is what.
right.
When, at the last meeting
Uh-huh.
of them,
Yep.
I had proposed, we've got several ways. We would prefer to wait. But if you insist, we can appoint. Because that's what the charter calls for. Now, there was issues that some other area of the charter says we couldn't, but that when we actually read it through and with the library committee, it didn't apply to this situation. So we could call a special election, which we didn't want to do. We could appoint, or we could just wait till November. And I gave them those options.
And it seemed like, from what you said, they actually could go either way, and we're pushing it back to us. So I was just wondering if what your presentation was pushing it back to us, or if we would actually.
They said they were good with whatever we chose. Really.
So they didn't make a recommendation.
Technically, you're correct. They didn't make a recommendation, but we had discussion around the point. And they felt they were good at, whatever we decided.
I
So are
move
we gonna-
we hold off until November for the
Oh, we already
library
voted,
committee.
we already
Yeah.
voted that earlier in
Yeah.
the agenda, so I just wondered
Yeah.
what their,
No, we didn't vote that. We voted.
voted to have the election in November for the
Yes.
library committee position. It was on tonight's agenda.
Okay,
Did I miss that one?
I think I missed that. one.
Library or school?
That was the school.
No, there was where was it? It was,
Okay. I don't remember that. And I wrote this thing. We didn't
No, I don't think, not,
It was
not for
the
library
reviewing the
committee.
milestones for
Oh, I
the-
know where it was. It was in your announcements.
Yeah, that there would be an election.
There'll be an election in November for the
Yes.
library committee.
Okay.
Implying that
Based
it
on
was
his
this-
discussion with the
this-
library committee, which
Fine.
may or may not have been a discussion according to Owen.
Okay.
I
He
would
is
totally
on
be cool with
Don't
appointing
forget the
someone.
book sale. Don't forget the book sale later this week.
Right on.
Setting
Did
up
you
tomorrow
notice
and
that?
Wednesday. I'll be over there. If anybody wants to attend the Penn Bay Regional Commerce, or Chamber of Commerce, they're meeting at the Bayview Hotel on Wednesday night, the 13th, 5 p.m.
Rooftop bar?
I don't know.
I'm sure.
Dude, the views that Rick and I were up there, it's a nice view.
Yep.
It's an amazing view.
And you're all aware of what's going on with Midcoast Solid Waste, so I turn this over to Ken.
ORC will have its first summer session meeting this Thursday. We'll do the sidewalk ordinance first, because that's the easiest, and then move on to the road ordinance, road acceptance ordinance, and the proposal to add hotels in the downtown district. Cemetery committee has not met. We do need to meet sooner rather than later, I think.
I have somebody on vacation for the next week.
Okay. But yeah, we've been postponing that for a while. We really need to get a meeting going there. Legacy Rockport, I've been working with them, although they have not met. I'm working with them for the jazz concert, which also tickets will be available at the book sale, at least on Thursday when I'll be there, and I'm hoping that other Legacy Rockport folks will be there to help sell after that, because I'll be away for the rest of the weekend. And that's it.
We
for
got our
me.
tickets.
Good.
Planning Board met on June 17th. They have an interesting new strategy where the chair has, wants to get people sort of trained in the process of actually leading the discussions. So they, for each particular motion in front of them, different people on the board will actually lead the entire inquisition, as it were. They have a new mandate from the state, which has to do with findings of facts, so that they're being very careful with their use of the English language and their voting. And my observation was they're exhibiting some growing pains, but in the end, it improved their process, and the board is made up of different enough personalities and expertise that they catch each other's mistakes. So it feels like it's a good working board. The people that were there this last time seemed to be happy with it. It was the strategy is, rather than coming back twice or thrice over the course of 3 months, that the planning board is throwing everything into one meeting, which may make for a long and tedious meeting, but the person who's applying, the applicant, comes out with everything they need, or knowing exactly what they need to do in order to get that. So,
Okay. Brendan?
Ad hoc library committee met. You guys know what to expect from them in terms of dates. This was my first meeting that I attended. My assessment was that that room is engaged in an earnest effort to incorporate the feedback that was received in the various, I think the terminology was working groups, workshops, focus groups. And there, in those workshops and focus groups, I was unable to get a sense for how the participants in those were selected, able to participate in those, but there's appears to be a consensus that, the information that was communicated in those, really needs to get to the public at large, obviously, and there are some renderings and representations that I saw at the most recent ad hoc committee meeting that very few people have seen. It is my presumption that you guys will see those next week, and that that they're a significant development in the process. I'll stop short of saying, characterizing whether they're, beneficial. I will go so far as to say this. Even with some architectural training, I was surprised by the degree to which the renderings convey two very significantly different building appearances on the same footprint of building. I don't think I have anything else to report on that. I have not yet met with Harbor Committee or Conservation, but I have Watershed Study, Harbor Committee, and Conservation all this coming Thursday evening.
Bouncing back to the library thing for just a second, we will, for the meeting that we have a second large monitor. So we'll be able to have one that we will watch drawings on, and then the audience will be able to do that.
No way.
A gift from someone. And I went up with the drone today and took pictures at 18 foot 6 inches off the
Oh, you did?
sidewalk for the view of what it would be like if we were to go with one of the apparently two.
Can you see the harbor?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Oh, you can.
Can you see anybody's bedroom? That was, I understand, one of the other
One was prancing
questions.
around.
Yeah.
I mean, houses,
Oh,
houses that
really?
are close to each other, you might have an opportunity. Yeah.
It's reading my book and watching that person.
Yeah. So anyway, I'll forward that asset to the chair, and they'll be presenting.
I guess I would also add that my perception, it was only my perception, is that there is a similar apprehension about the timetable between now and November. And I presume that we're going to be hearing about that apprehension next week.
Yeah, the question seems to be coming up that, which are we, the cart or the horse? And, which is leading here, and, should November be considered? So we'll talk about that.
It's on the table.
Yeah. Okay.
Let me go. Capital Improvements Committee, we got nothing there. Miko Solid Waste, we've already covered. Rec just gave their presentation and be happy to answer any other questions you all may have. So Pathways met. It was a little bit of a lean meeting, but they again talked about Route 1 North, the necessity of having a point person. This is Camden stuff, so it's not overly pertinent to us, but it's a big deal for the Pathways Committee, is making sure that Route 1 North, Gateway, whatever you want to call it, into Lincolnville goes according to plan. There's a lot of stuff going on there. There's a lot of trees and rocks and things that are going to have to be moved, so they would really like to have a point person who's liaisoning between the town and MDOT. Talked about the Riverwalk, the overall picture for the Riverwalk. Signage, too. Apparently, thank goodness that we're Rockport and we're awesome. Camden has really, if it's a permanent sign, you have to get the post approved, let alone the sign that goes on it, and there's a huge price tag. It's amazing, because they just wanted to get some signage up for the Riverwalk, but Landon said it was going to be like $6,000 for 2 signs. Yeah! So that was fun to laugh at. We are definitely pinning down new committee members. We had Liza Hazelton resign because of her work on the library committee. She would love to come back after ad hoc is done, but in the time being, she had to resign. We lost some Camden members as well, all for good reasons. But
Liza's on ad hoc?
She's on the elected library committee.
oh, I'm sorry, elected library, not ad hoc. So I have John Titus as a potential member. He bikes all the time. He's a carpenter, good friend. And then also some people from Camden. So trying to get that committee going pretty good.
If John has his
Not
committee
yet.
application request?
Not yet. We're still schmoozing him.
Okay,
We're
well, when he
still-
gets them in, I could, we can still get him in on the 22nd.
Oh, good, because, well, and the thing is approaching the right person.
Yeah.
Hey, would you like to be on a town committee? No. How about Pathways? Oh, what do they do? So now we're trying to do that.
We'll leave it in your hands. I'm
Yep.
just giving you the timeline.
We briefly touched on something that Tyler Smith said. He said Dad, Stuart, has been, purchasing land, because that's what Stuart does. And he said that a lot of Stewart's land is now joining themselves and happened to be in a decent spot from point A to point B. And someone had caught him at a bad time to propose a pathway. He was busy, but he said, talk to my dad again. So there's new opportunities that we're exploring, even though we haven't finished up the things that we're supposed to be doing. The only thing that kind of really applies to us in Rockport is how muddy the waters are around that Maritime Farms grant, the sidewalk extension from Quarry Hill, the joint Camden-Rockport sidewalk bit. What the problem seems to be, and I like Pat Finnegan a lot, she's an extremely busy woman. She showed some resistance to appointing a second point of contact specifically through to the state. So when the Pathways Committee does a lot of work in conjunction with Jamie scrambles and sends out an email, an informational email. It gets to Pat, and she's a really busy lady. And so it's been difficult for us to really understand, did Arel get what we thought? Because now so it's gotten a little muddy, but apparently they're going to do a little caravan down to MDOT in Augusta within the next month to hit a handful. Apparently within the same building, there's 3 different projects that apply to them. So they're going to spend the day down there with MDOT trying to get on the same page with some of these projects. The recommendation from the Pathways Committee has been and will probably continue to be, and I had brought this up to the board before and kind of restated it to them, shorter and better constructed, we, the Pathways Committee, thinks would be preferable to longer and poor construction. Not poor construction, but the way that it was,
The desired construction.
it's not the desired construction. What we put the application for was basically rolled asphalt down from Quarry Hill down to Leonard's. Because of shifting everything in Pathways, they said, well, we'd like to have an esplanade and maybe the pathway a little bit wider. Well, your budget doesn't cover that. Well, can we have it constructed the way we want it to, just wherever the money stops is where you all stop? That does put Rockport in a little bit of a funky spot because we would get less sidewalk constructed. But what we thought is if that is a possibility with MDOT, we would then try to have a more than a gentleman's agreement with the town of Camden that when the town of Rockport continues and finishes this project on the before agreed upon distance, the town of Camden would help pick up their share in the same structure it was with the original agreement.
Would you write that up?
Sure.
If you need us to take a vote on that?
Yep.
Would you write that up and get it to me?
And
Probably not gonna get it on this next agenda, but maybe the end of August.
And it's so weird with the timeline. I don't quite know what the timeline is. I don't know if we've passed the timeline. If not, because we've passed timelines.
Yeah.
But then we continue to try to work it, and so I don't even know if it would be useful or not. I'll talk
Okay.
with Jamie and Jeff Scott tomorrow, try to get on the
Yeah.
same
Probably
page
need
with
to
them.
wait and see
Yeah.
what.
Well,
how it's all
if
gonna
we
shake
need to
out.
take a vote on this, I need to have the
What I'll also
proper
do-
wording.
I'll better pin down the date in which Pat's going down there with her people, and if she needs another bit of information to help sell it to Arel, then I will make sure we try to get it on that timeline.
Okay,
And that's it for me.
very good. Anything else?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? That's unanimous. Good?